lot of fog across some eastern areas of the UK. So fog warning is in force from the Met Office, and that remains in force until midday on Saturday. Elsewhere, lots of cloud overnight. Where we do see some clearer skies, though, for eastern Scotland and northeast England, we could see some frost as we start tomorrow morning. Quite windy, though, across the far southwest. And those winds will be quite gusty for a time across Cornwall. Elsewhere, though, with the light winds, it means that fog will be stubborn to clear. So for some places, it may not clear through the day on Saturday, staying gloomy and grey. To the west of the UK, some brighter spells are possible. I think the best of any sunshine will be across Scotland. Temperatures struggling, though, for many staying in single figures, maybe just getting to 10 degrees in the far southwest. That's 50 Fahrenheit, but with a breeze, it will feel cooler. And then the fog becomes more widespread again on Saturday night. We could see some fog getting into parts of Wales, southwest England as well. So for some places, grey and gloomy remains the picture for the next couple of days. Some clearer skies again leads to a frost across parts of Scotland, maybe northern England, perhaps parts of Wales as well, although cloud amounts will come and go through the night. Then as we go into Sunday, that fog could again persist across some parts of the country, especially through the Midlands and northern England. That's where we could see it lasting all day. Where it does, temperatures will stay close to freezing, but away from that, it'll be just that little bit colder. As we go into next week, stays grey for many, a few sunny spells and cold. Bye-bye.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Very excited about tonight's show and brilliant to have your company. You won't want to miss a second. In Mark Needs, I'll be joined in the studio by one of the victims of the post office scandal. Do you remember this? In which postmasters were accused of stealing from their own company. The human and financial impact was devastating to those falsely accused, and I'll be speaking to one of the victims who was sent to prison, and we'll hear her amazing story. In Frequently Asked Questions, everything you wanted to know about Whisky. Could it be the perfect Christmas tipple? That's what they're all saying. And with a PM under pressure, we'll be looking at the runners and riders for the Tory party leadership. If Boris goes, who do you want to replace him? Or should he stay? That's the topic of my big opinion in a couple of minutes. And I'll be asking former Tory MP Jerry Hayes and the king of British political journalism, the Sun's Trevor Kavanagh. Plus my highly entertaining panel reacting to the big stories of the day, and another Great British game show as well. A big game based around a news story of the day, so a packed 3 hours. But first, the headlines with Karen Roberts.
Thank you, Mark. These are your latest headlines. Cabinet Secretary Simon Case has stepped down from leading an investigation into alleged parties held in government during lockdown. His decision comes after the Cabinet Office admitted a quiz was held in his department last December. Officials say Mr. Case played no part in the event, but did speak briefly to staff before leaving. A Number 10 spokesperson said the move was made to ensure the investigation retains public confidence. The Prime Minister says he takes personal responsibility for the Conservatives' defeat in the North Shropshire by-election. Boris Johnson's comments come after the party lost a seat that it held for almost 200 years. The Lib Dems candidate, Helen Morgan, won by nearly 6,000 votes. The by-election was triggered by the resignation of Owen Paterson after he breached lobbying rules. He had a 2019 majority of almost 23,000.
Clearly, the vote in North Shropshire is a very disappointing result, and I totally understand people's frustrations. I hear what the voters are saying in North Shropshire, and in all humility, I've got to accept that verdict.
Police have confirmed the 4 young boys who died in a house fire in South London were home alone. In a Facebook post, the 2 sets of twins, aged 3 and 4, were named by their grandfather as Leighton, Logan, Kyson and Bryson. A 27-year-old woman has been arrested on suspicion of child neglect. 2 teenagers have been convicted of the manslaughter of 18-year-old Hussein Chowdhury in Walthamstow. Video released by the Met Police shows Hussein and his family grappling with one of the attackers. He had come to their home under the ruse of buying a designer jacket Hussein had for sale. During the struggle, Hussein suffered a fatal stab injury to his neck. Marvin Ward and Alexis Morris, both 18 and from Ilford, will be sentenced next year. The First Minister of Wales is now urging everyone to meet outdoors and to take lateral flow tests before attending social gatherings. It follows the announcement that tougher measures will be introduced from December the 27th, following a surge in the Omicron variant. There'll be a return to mandatory 2 metre social distancing in offices, and nightclubs will be closed.
We've been dealing with the Welsh Government and their caution for some time now, and we thought we'd done enough to not be picked on again, like some weakling in the playground. But once again, the bully boys have moved in and started kicking us.
You are right up to date now. Back to Mark Dolan tonight.
It's Friday, December the 17th. We've got a fabulous show lined up for you. We've got that Friday feeling. We'll find out the history of Whisky in Frequently Asked Questions. My Mark Meets guest is one of the victims of the shocking post office postmaster scandal. Do you remember that? In which perfectly innocent people running local post offices were accused of stealing huge amounts of money from the company. It took them years to get justice, and it's been devastating for their lives. I'll be speaking to one of the victims live in the studio alongside the tenacious journalist who helped unearth the story. We'll catch up with Jason Miller, the man hoping to save free speech in the Western world. He's the CEO of the Twitter rival Getter, and he joins us live from the United States at 11. And in the big question shortly, with Boris under pressure following his by-election defeat last night in North Shropshire. If he goes, and it's a big if, who should replace him? Who would you like to take charge? We'll get the runners and riders in any future leadership contest with former Tory MP Jerry Hayes and one of the most experienced and respected political journalists in the country, the man who has interviewed every Prime Minister since Margaret Thatcher and beyond, the Sun's political columnist Trevor Kavanagh. Very excited about my panel tonight, who will be reacting to the big stories of the day and looking at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. We have political commentator Connor Tomlinson, who makes a welcome return to the show. TV personality and broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant. And last but not least, an old friend of mine, commentator and broadcaster Andre Walker. But my priority is to get your views on the national television airwaves. So drop me an email now and throughout the show, mark@gbnews.uk. A packed 3 hours, a heady mix of big opinion, big stories and a few big laughs along the way. After all, it is Friday and we want to have some fun. And remember, we don't do boring, not on my watch. So, big old programme, pour yourself a baby sham and let's get to work. The halo has slipped for Boris Johnson. Now, who would be Prime Minister during a pandemic like this? An impossible task, and of course, the disease nearly took his own life. So you've got to cut the guy some slack and have some sympathy. And there's no doubt that Boris has been an election-winning machine. But he just seems to struggle with that bit in between, running the country. How can a Prime Minister with an 80-seat majority look so weak? To be fair, he got Brexit done, for which we can all be grateful. I would have feared a democratic crisis and unrest if he hadn't. Plus the vaccine rollout and Freedom Day on the 19th of July, which was politically very brave. And if you have to lock people down, which I believe you don't, the furlough scheme was a policy triumph, saving countless jobs and businesses. But since the pandemic began, there has been a lingering feeling that Boris has been in office, but not in power. As every day goes by, he's looking more and more like Theresa May in a blonde wig. He can't sack anyone, even if they've obviously got to go, like Dominic Cummings or Matt Hancock. He lets Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance run the country for a year and a half, even though lockdowns, the curtailment of civil liberties, hysterical borrowing and public health strategies are actually a political decision. He's got himself in a pickle over who paid for his wallpaper, which doesn't really matter to most of the British public, but it further paints a picture of a Prime Minister that is a passenger to events, not in the driving seat. Do you honestly think Margaret Thatcher would have put up with drunken parties at Number 10 and elsewhere when the rest of the country was in lockdown? I don't think so. So either he and his team have blatantly ignored the rules that he was forcing on the rest of us, showing utter contempt, or perhaps he didn't know what was happening on his watch and he's oblivious to the behaviour of those under him. Either scenario is not befitting of a Prime Minister. It's hard to know what's worse. Boris broke the rules, or he just didn't know what was going on. Then there's the overnight conversion to the environmental cause, with a hellishly expensive and scientifically debatable target of net zero by Tuesday of next week, whilst countries like India, Brazil, the USA and China pollute like it's going out of fashion. Astonishingly, we can't rule out that it's pressure from her indoors, Mrs Johnson, that's behind the eco agenda. So who is actually running Britain? Is it Boris? Is it Chris? Is it Patrick? Is it Carrie? It's like a whodunit, or a who didn't do it. How soon before the new baby daughter's in charge? Now, your spouse and advisors will always have a bit of influence, and I'm all for cleaning up the planet. Who doesn't want a healthy world to pass on to the next generation? And who doesn't want clean air? Plus, green technology is a huge economic opportunity for this country, and we're really good at it. But the eco agenda feels hurried, uncosted, and no one voted for it. It strikes me that it falls into the category of one of Boris's big projects that never quite comes to fruition, like the ill-fated Garden Bridge in London. This was a project that cost £53 million and was never built. That's right, it cost 53 million quid and they never built it. A bridge too far for Bojo. What about the tunnel between Scotland and Northern Ireland? Lovely part of the country, of course, and the idea was to dig a tunnel between our two great chunks of land, but coming in at an eye-popping 15 billion quid. Boris has always had expensive taste. Speaking of tunnels, Boris is digging at the moment, and the hole is getting deeper. One self-inflicted disaster after another. No wonder backbenchers are losing faith. Last night's by-election result was a bad nosebleed, but nothing compared to the kicking given to him by his own backbenchers on Tuesday in the vote for Plan B COVID measures. Almost 100 brave Tories, 8 heroic Labour MPs, the Lib Dems and Jeremy Corbyn rightly voted against needless and scientifically unproven COVID passports, masks and work-from-home orders. The human and economic damage from these measures will be massive, and a Conservative estimate suggests that this just-in-case policy will cost the economy a further 18 billion quid, not to mention collapsed businesses and more wrecked lives. All for a variant of COVID-19, Omicron, which appears to be milder than the Songs of Praise Christmas party. The woman who discovered the Omicron variant, Dr. Angelique Coetzee, head of South Africa's Medical Association, believes the Omicron COVID variant can actually help us out of the pandemic. She told Dan Wootton on this channel that the majority of your people are going to get Omicron. Do they need to panic? No, please don't. Her words, not mine. The problem with this endless political soap opera around Boris is that it's a distraction from the things that really matter to you. Inflation is at over 5%, which destroys the value of the pound in your pocket and sees the price of petrol, central heating and food go through the roof. We're currently in a shocking cost of living crisis, and this group of politicians are just too distracted, or they don't care. Boris and his partner in crime, the Deputy Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, are obsessed with COVID. Even Omicron, which based on South African data, was clearly less of a threat, and we've known that for weeks. These two men have formed the Coalition from Hell, giving us COVID passports, for which in Wales and Scotland there is no evidence of effectiveness. And of course, masks, which I'll be dealing with in a special Big Opinion tomorrow night. So Wales's First Minister, Mark Drakeford, who it's rumoured wanted to cancel Christmas altogether, has, after months of masks and vaccine passports, just closed nightclubs. That's right, he's just closed nightclubs. What a shame, because he himself is such a great mover. There he is in the middle, shaking some moves, throwing those hips around. He's nimble-footed. Look at that. The man has a sort of Latin rhythm. Blimey. Michael Jackson, eat your heart out. This man is strictly disastrous, and I give him a big fat 0. Wales is a salutary lesson to all of us. They've had all of this circuit breaker lockdowns, passports and masks, whilst cases in England after Freedom Day fell. But like a true old-school socialist, Drakeford loves a bit of state control. So he's also bringing back the beloved one-way system in shops and restaurants. Many thanks to Politics for All on Twitter for the story. There it is. The one-way system in shops and restaurants will return in Wales in order to, wait for it, stop Omicron. Absolutely right. All of us following arrows in supermarkets will really have Omicron quaking in its boots. We all know COVID hates it when we walk in single file, just as COVID hates it when we sit down in the pub. Everyone knows you've got to be standing up to catch COVID. Basic science, innit? In my view, nasty and sometimes deadly though it can be, the virus never justified this damage or these tyrannical measures. And with mild symptoms for up to 5 days, according to data genius Tim Spector of the Zoe COVID app, Omicron certainly doesn't justify this madness. In fact, the Metro have kindly outlined the main 5 symptoms of Omicron, and here they are. Fatigue, night sweats, scratchy throat, dry cough, mild muscle aches. Eh? Is it just me, or is that a cold? Remember them? Sounds like a bloody cold to me. Plus, Omicron is everywhere. It's quicker than Usain Bolt and catchier than ABBA's greatest hits. If it does push the NHS over the edge, that's not the work of the virus, that's the NHS itself, which has been on the verge of collapse for years. The people in the NHS are heroes, the very best of us. Everyone's got a story about the NHS. But the organisation is failing. COVID is the straw that broke the camel's back. But the camel's legs have been wobbling for decades. And yet still thousands of frontline medical workers are self-isolating at the insistence of management because they've been in contact with someone that got Omicron. I say, if you haven't got symptoms, get back to work and save lives. I know that if I worked in the NHS, I would have ignored the ping from day one if I didn't have symptoms. And many brave doctors and nurses did exactly that. They ignored the ping because they knew that if they hadn't, lives would have been lost. All too often, NHS workers, doctors, nurses, surgeons have been sat at home doing nothing during the pandemic, often symptom-free, as the waiting list for far more serious illnesses like cancer swells. Now, you can play the blame game all you like, but the buck stops at the top. All of this chaos, self-inflicted damage and expense is happening on the watch of Boris Johnson, and he's asleep at the wheel. I think the blonde bombshell has until the May local elections next year to prove that he can do more with power than just win it. Boris is fast running out of time and friends. The message is clear. Boris needs to be more Boris. Bojo is no Joe without his mojo. Reacting to the big stories of the day and, of course, commenting on tomorrow's newspaper front pages is my amazing panel tonight. Political commentator Connor Tomlinson, broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant and presenter and journalist Andre Walker. And I would apologise to all three of you for keeping you from your Christmas parties. But Connor Tomlinson, they've probably all been cancelled.
Or Boris is currently attending them all in my stead. I don't think, unfortunately, Mark, I can agree with you in cutting him some sort of slack, even though he got COVID, because it seems like either COVID has claimed the testicular fortitude that made him such a charismatic and bouncy personality, being mayor and PM, or his testicles are safely secured in Carrie's purse, because it seems that we're being led by the nose either by unelected sage or the breakfast in bed conversations he has with his wife at this point. It doesn't seem like things are going to get better after every single restriction he keeps bringing in, but Chris Whitty wants until 2023. He seems to look more and more deflated, and now we're nose-diving into the costs of net zero. But then throughout this crisis, he's lied on the Commons floor repeatedly, covered for his colleagues' corruption, and attended more parties than I did when I was a student. So I think I'm not sure what's better for the country at this point. Either he just stands down and lets either a patsy or someone like Liz Truss take his place, or he just gets a divorce.
Well, Connor, I don't think there's any problem with the Prime Minister's reproductive organs based upon the head count of children that he enjoys, and congratulations on the arrival of the latest one. But there are lots of people watching this programme, Connor, who still back Boris. He has, is it a 79-seat majority now after yesterday, 78, certainly just under 80. And he's got a mandate to lead. And the bottom line is the last thing this country needs is a new Prime Minister. We just need Boris to do better, don't we?
Well, I disagree. I wouldn't say we need I wouldn't say that a new Prime Minister would be a bad thing. It just depends on who. If we're looking at someone like Michael Gove, that's digging the ditch even deeper, and that's the last thing we would want. If we're looking at someone like Rishi Sunak, OK, is he particularly trustworthy? When he last came on GBNews, for example, he was asked, oh, what about the net zero spending? Did you cost it? And he said, oh, don't worry, I'm a fiscal conservative. I know it's not my money I'm spending. And then proceeded to print a lot of money and spend a lot of money. So can he be taken on his word? Probably not as much as Boris. So if it's someone with principles, someone more like the backbenchers who rebelled against vaccine passports, I'd be happy to see Boris deposed. The question is, are we going to get that?
You know you're in trouble when Boris Johnson is more trustworthy than you are. Ingrid, what are your thoughts about the Prime Minister and his sort of ongoing viability? I mean, he's a little bit like a boxer that's been on the canvas a couple of times. Can he get off his feet and can he win the match?
Oh, I don't know. I think in about May or June, I said Boris must go. So we're talking several months ago, and I still feel that. But it's who to follow? I mean, is he the best of a bad bunch? They are a bad bunch. Connor mentioned Liz Truss, because I was looking through thinking, well, who would be a good replacement for him? So I was looking through the whole cabinet and everything. And none of them. And Liz Truss, I know, is quite a firm favourite, but I looked at her background. She's She's a bit like Boris in a way. Boris started off being a Remainer and switched to Brexit. She did as well. She started a little bit kind of left of centre, and now she's gone a little bit right. So I don't trust people that flip-flop a little bit like that. They're not too sure of where they're going. I think he is just very insecure in himself. He's very indecisive. He turns to other people to help to make the decisions. He trusts the people around him to prop him up, but they're not necessarily propping him up in the right way. But he can't see and make that final decision for himself. I think he's so weak. I think he's so pathetic, and he's a liar. And I find it quite frightening that there's 2 more little Borises in this world. He's already got 5 or 6 or 7. Well, he doesn't even know. There you go. That says an awful lot about him. Man doesn't know how many children his father's. He's sort of, I don't know.
Ingrid, as I mentioned in my monologue, he ended our Brexit purgatory, which we can all be grateful for. Even Remainers can be glad that that's over. A decisive victory, the vaccine rollout, the furlough scheme, and also Freedom Day. Now, you've been a critic of lockdowns, but I think any other Prime Minister would have actually continued lockdowns after the 19th of July, but the Prime Minister stood his ground on that one. So be careful what you wish for.
Are you talking to me still?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the first lockdown, everybody did it because nobody knew what was going on.
I didn't want to, for the record.
Oh, did you not?
No.
Well, no, I don't think any of us wanted to. Well, I certainly didn't, because we're all free-loving people.
But Boris Johnson, Ingrid, delivered Freedom Day on the 19th of July. I can't imagine any other Conservative would have done that. Certainly not Prime Minister Michael Gove.
It was after a delay, though. He kicked the can down the road, and then he said it was irreversible, and now he's introducing vaccine passports. The man doesn't have any principles. If he says, oh, I don't want to lock down anymore one more time, and then introduce a restriction, well, it just shows, hey, it's not necessary. It just shows that you've got no morals to stand on.
Well, that's my point, Andre, because I don't want this to be a Boris-bashing session here. The guy won an election in 2019, and I think we all are invested in him being successful. But for me, as I've said in my big opinion, the halo has slipped. And I think yesterday's result in North Shropshire demonstrates that.
Well, you said it was like a whodunit. It's like a game of Cluedo, isn't it? Who killed Boris Johnson? It was Professor Whitty in the cabinet briefing room with a vaccine passport. The reality is you've ceded control of this country to a man who is such a sad individual, who is so incapable of human interaction that when 2 people attempt to get a selfie with him, he called Special Branch and demanded personal bodyguards. The guy's an absolute loony. We do not need that person in charge because he doesn't value social contact. That's probably because he doesn't have any friends himself. Actually, I've got no proof of that, but I just can't imagine that he's got any friends.
Well, we're not his friends, are we?
But Andre, now I think that's a bit harsh. He's clearly a guy of great integrity and expertise, and I did see that video, and it looked like those lads were rather aggressive, frankly. So
I did look. At the end of the day, people. I mean, you and I have had people drunk walk up to us. I mean, I'm genuinely
family members.
It's as much as I love it. By the way,
GBNews producers.
But on an entirely serious note. The problem here with Chris Whitty is that we have taken away any interest in economics, any interest in society, any interest in mental health. The only thing we are doing is running an experiment on whether we can control a virus. And in reality, look, nobody disputes the fact that if we all sit in our houses for the rest of eternity, we won't catch viruses off each other. But it's not a sensible comment when you're talking about attempting to run society. And people talk about the NHS, Mark. At what point do we have to start abolishing universal healthcare, abolishing policing, abolishing universal courts, simply because we don't have the money? The idea that we can lose this amount of money forever and continue to be a first world country is nonsense. I believe our society is self-aborting, and we need to be deeply concerned about it because it's the number one issue of our era.
Andre, briefly, if you can, though, this is a libertarian prime minister. If you ditch him, you have to be careful what you wish for, don't you? The alternative would be far worse. Prime Minister Jeremy Hunt, the biggest lockdown zealot you'll find in Parliament.
Well, that is certainly the risk. And I think actually, I think Conor was slightly unfair to your point. The reality is, it is by no means provably untrue that Boris Johnson is not the only person in Whitehall who actually believes in not locking down forever. You've got Gove getting Dominic Cummings running after him, after Boris, that is, attempting to fight for longer and more draconian lockdowns. I have to say to you, I would be deeply concerned about a replacement for Boris, because I think there's a lot of people who'd be significantly worse. And by the way, remember, Keir Starmer loves the lockdown. He'd lock us all down forever.
My Big Opinion monologue will be available on our Twitter feed in the next couple of minutes. Check it out. Carl is busy at work editing it. And, of course, you can catch all of the highlights from tonight's show, and there will be many. We've got Jason Miller coming up. He is the founder and CEO of Getter, which is a big rival to Twitter. He is single-handedly trying to save free speech. He'll be joining us after 11. Another great British game show as well. And my Mark Meets guest, a victim of the Post Office postmaster scandal. This is a woman that was sent to prison and completely unlawfully, and she's free now, and she tells her story at 10 o'clock. So all of that to get through, and my panel will return for the news agenda. We'll have a look at Labour later in this hour. Why aren't they cutting through? It was a bad result for Boris. It was a bad result for Keir as well. Will Labour ever achieve power, or should they consider signing up to proportional representation? We'll find out what's going wrong for Labour shortly. And next up in the big question, if Boris goes, who should be the next Tory leader? Former political editor of The Sun, Trevor Kavanagh, and former Tory MP Jerry Hayes will give their expert analysis and answer that very question after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. This weekend we've got high pressure in charge of our weather, which brings dry and rather cloudy weather with the risk of some dense fog. And it will feel quite chilly as well. There's not much wind around over the weekend, and that means that fog will be persistent and temperatures will struggle to rise where we do see the persisting cloud and indeed fog. Now, as we take a look through the next few days, you can see certainly through tonight, we've got a lot of fog across some eastern areas of the UK. So fog warning is in force from the Met Office, and that remains in force until midday on Saturday. Elsewhere, lots of cloud overnight. Where we do see some clearer skies, though, for eastern Scotland and northeast England, we could see some frost as we start tomorrow morning. Quite windy, though, across the far southwest. And those winds will be quite gusty for a time across Cornwall. Elsewhere, though, with the light winds, it means that fog will be stubborn to clear. So for some places, it may not clear through the day on Saturday, staying gloomy and grey. To the west of the UK, some brighter spells are possible. I think the best of any sunshine will be across Scotland. Temperatures struggling, though, for many staying in single figures, maybe just getting to 10 degrees in the far southwest. That's 50 Fahrenheit, but with a breeze, it will feel cooler. And then the fog becomes more widespread again on Saturday night. We could see some fog getting into parts of Wales, southwest England as well. So for some places, grey and gloomy remains the picture for the next couple of days. Some clearer skies, again, leads to a frost across parts of Scotland, maybe northern England, perhaps parts of Wales as well, although cloud amounts will come and go through the night. Then as we go into Sunday, that fog could again persist across some parts of the country, especially through the Midlands and northern England. That's where we could see it lasting all day. Where it does, temperatures will stay close to freezing, but away from that, it'll be just that little bit colder. As we go into next week, stays grey for many, a few sunny spells and cold. Bye-bye.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Strong response to my big opinion at the start of the show. It was about Boris. I'm actually not calling time on his political career, but I think Boris needs to be more Boris and he needs to get his mojo back. Well, lots of views on both sides. Declan says it doesn't really matter who's going to take over. The baton will be passed on, but China still wins gold. Sally says, Mark, better the buffoon you know than the one you don't. Be careful what you wish for. Thank you, Sally. Michael says, Boris the bumbling buffoon needs to go ASAP. He has destroyed small businesses with his dystopian, authoritarian, unconservative COVID policies. And he has crushed enterprise by whacking taxes up, something he said he wouldn't do. He ain't conservative. He's a globalist green communist. Great intro to your show. Well, thank you so much for that, Michael. Aid says, I sensed, Mark, that something was amiss when Boris started talking about building back better and greener in a more gender-neutral, feminine way. I remember when he said that. We should build back in a gender-neutral and gender-feminine way. There and then you just knew this guy is a fake and has lost the plot. Sadly, Boris is not the real deal we all hoped for, which is a shame because we wanted him to do well. Frank says that I'm no fan of Boris, but the management of pandemics inevitably involves frequent changes of strategy, even U-turns. So stop navel-gazing and get real. Jackie says, hi, Mark, all this Boris bashing. As for your female panellist, she's outrageous, spouting off about how many children Boris has. That's according to Jackie. And finally, Brenda says, Mark, you ask who should replace Boris. The answer to me is obvious. You have interviewed him several times. Steve Baker, MP. A proven leader, intelligent, highly principled, a great communicator. What's not to like? Well, Brenda, we're going to have that conversation right now because it's time for the big question in which we tackle one of the major topics of the day. After sleaze scandals, allegations of parties during lockdown last year, and now the humiliating defeat in a Tory stronghold at the North Shropshire by-election, Boris's days look to be numbered. Bookies are now saying the PM is less than 50% likely to be fighting the next election. So if he goes, who should replace him? To go through the runners and riders, I'm delighted to welcome barrister and former Conservative MP an iconic star of late-night 90s TV, Jerry Hayes, and one of the most experienced and respected political journalists in the country, The Sun's political columnist, Trevor Kavanagh. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Jerry, let's start with you, and I think you'd like to pick up on something that my panellist, Andre Walker, just said.
Oh, really? I just said he was so insane he should be sectioned, but there we are.
Well, it's all about opinions, isn't it? I mean, what's your opinion of last night's by-election loss? I mean, the government are mid-term, and governments don't often win by-elections, do they?
And the Liberal Democrats always do incredibly well. Normally, it doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, it actually matters for Boris Johnson because he's had so many hits in the last few weeks. It's not a question of when Boris Johnson goes, he is going to go. So what we have to discuss tonight is when it's going to happen.
Well, yes, indeed. And Trevor, that's the million-dollar question. Do you think the Prime Minister's days are numbered?
In any normal circumstances and with any other Prime Minister, I have to say he was toast, wouldn't you? And I still think that's probably true. It's almost impossible to imagine what he could possibly do now to save his skin. All he has, the one thing he does have, well, two things he has, is that there's time. There will be until April or May after the local elections, because nobody wants to take over as leader while that's looming, and there's certain reduction in numbers, perhaps a crash in the numbers. The only other thing he's got going for him is the fact that you've got so many different factions. That leaves him with a little bit of room for manoeuvre, but it's so tiny that even the slippery pig, I think, is going to have a job getting away with this one.
Do you think Boris is up to the job, Trevor? You've interviewed every Prime Minister since Margaret Thatcher and beyond. I mean, we know that he's an election-winning machine, but has he been found out in high office?
Sadly, I think he has. I mean, we all had high hopes for him, and after all, he won an 80-seat majority and he got Brexit done. Those are pretty big achievements, which he will be able to hang on to for the rest of his life. But ever since then, largely, I think, because of the fact that he himself nearly died from COVID, and the fact that ever since that particular point, the country is in a state of panic thanks to him and the sage scientists. I think that he's been so distracted that his natural attention deficit has expanded to fill this great gap, which means that there's nobody at the helm. Either he's getting no advice or he's getting good advice and ignoring it.
Seems to be a combination of the two, Trevor. I've always credited the Prime Minister for Freedom Day on the 19th of July. There was pressure from sage scientists and the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, said Freedom Day on the 19th of July was reckless. Well, cases in England fell. We did a Sweden for a few months. And I wonder whether this decision to have COVID passports in England is what's lost the dressing room in terms of many Tory backbench MPs.
I think right now that Boris is going to be unpopular with them no matter what he does. The simple fact that we are going into a second lockdown in all but name has completely scuppered his status with the party. The success that he came away with after the election has evaporated. They don't any longer feel thankful to him. They don't feel grateful anymore. Gratitude is a scarce commodity in politics at the best of times. But he's lost it all. And what is most worrying is that we're now going to find that in a week or two's time, when the science comes in, that this has just been another mutant, which perhaps is even beneficial to the country because it's going to spread immunity. And what have we done? We've squandered the second chance of a recovery. And we may find that this time businesses really will go to the wall. They won't be able to scramble back. They're on their last legs or hanging on by the skin of their teeth, and this will kick the ground from under them.
Jerry Hayes, you've sat on the Conservative backbenches. Go on, Jerry, what did you want to say?
No. Trevor is absolutely accurate about this. The relationship between Boris Johnson and his backbenchers and his party is purely transactional. there is not an ism. It's not like Margaret Thatcher, who actually believed in things, was a woman of principle, and knew exactly where she was. Boris was elected by the backbenchers purely as an electoral winning machine. He is no longer an electoral winning machine. And that is his problem. He has done little to assist the Tory party. At the moment, he will be gone. The question is when he'll be gone. I think it's probably about the end of January. Other people think it's about September. But Boris Johnson will no longer lead the Tory party into the next election. And I think most people agree with that.
What makes you so sure, Jerry? I mean, I wonder whether it's wishful thinking on your part.
No, it's not wishful thinking. I just speak to backbenchers. I speak to ministers. I've got a bet on with various ministers when he's going to go. And that's the interesting thing, is not whether, it's when. The next question is, how do we replace him? Is it going to be Rishi Sunak? Is it going to be hardly Priti Patel or Dominic Raab? Is it going to be Liz Truss? This is what everyone is talking about now. We are talking about ministers now thinking about putting the telephone machines in for the campaign. This is all about the end of Boris Johnson. The question is when it's going to be the end.
What are you hearing from those backbenchers and ministers? Why is Boris on borrowed time? I know he's had a week to forget, Jerry, but he has survivability, doesn't he, as a politician, winning two elections in London, in Labour-dominated Greater London, and, of course, that election in December 2019. You underestimate this guy at your peril. What's the problem with Boris? Why do they think his departure is inevitable?
No, because Trevor and I will remember the days when Margaret Thatcher suddenly started disappearing in the opinion polls. They will remember when Margaret Thatcher was regarded as rather arrogant and out of touch. This is what you've got with Boris Johnson now. He is regarded as out of touch. He's not a winner. And he's not going to survive. It's really when. It's the date. I think, Trevor, you might probably agree with that. I mean, we've been doing this stuff for years together. He's not a winner, is he?
Well, not at the moment. Someone who knows Boris very well and likes him but doesn't necessarily trust him said the big thing about the by-election is that by-elections are opportunities for voters to tell the government of the day what they really think. It's not about the economy, it's about the overall government and the leader. And on this occasion, the issue was trust. They don't trust Boris anymore. And for good reason. I mean, this is the real problem that Boris is going to have enormous trouble reversing and overcoming. He has lost the trust of the British people because he has not told the truth, to say the least. He told them that he was going to cut taxes. He's told them that there was no parties. We now know there are plenty. He went to the rescue of Owen Paterson, who, had he simply swallowed his medicine, there wouldn't have been a by-election. I mean, that catastrophe on its own would be enough to cast doubts over Boris Johnson's leadership, his grasp of detail, his ability to decide, and so on. So I think that basically only a miracle will save him. And one person has suggested a possible miracle to me, which is that Rishi Sunak, if he wants to establish his credentials as the next Prime Minister, needs to do something to save this government, this administration. And maybe an emergency budget in March, a tax-cutting budget, could begin to do something for them. But, you know, that's a big ask, and I don't know where you get the money from after this.
Well, that's a big question.
Well, I'll tell you, Trevor, they'd get it from us.
Go on, Jerry.
They'd get the money from us.
Well, they do. And in fact, they borrow it, Jerry, on behalf of future generations, British citizens that haven't even been born yet. Well, look, gentlemen, with the short time that's ahead of us, I've got a short list for future leader of Michael Gove, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss and Priti Patel. Is that about right, would you say?
Matt Hancock.
And obviously, Matt Hancock. Never say never.
I'd go
Absolutely.
He's got tremendous judgment.
Of course he has. And the
Of course he
Grinch.
does. And he's great on camera as well.
Look, there's only one person who is going to coalesce, the Conservative Party is going to coalesce behind, and that is Rishi Sunak. You're going to have the mad people like Liz Truss. I don't understand her. She's like lettuce, one of God's great mistakes. You're going to have Priti Patel, absolutely useless. You've got to have someone the party can trust in. Let's look at it on the other way around. Who would Labour be most scared of? I tell you, it's Rishi Sunak. And that's the way to look at it.
Trevor, what do you think? Thanks for the addition, of course, of Matt Hancock, because we do like a good laugh on this show. Michael Gove, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, Patel. Am I missing anyone?
No, I'm sorry. I'm in full agreement with Jerry on this. It has to be Rishi. At least he knows what he's doing. He knows how the economy runs. Frankly, you need someone in charge of this ship now who can do a decent budget. He is a Thatcherite. He's an admirer of Nigel Lawson, who was a brilliant chancellor, and I think he has the wherewithal to take it on. He just needs a little time, and that takes him up to, say, May, or as Jerry suggests, September, to grow a little more mature in office.
There you go. Well, both of my expert guests, one of the most respected political journalists in the country and a former top Tory himself, a Tory backbencher, TV star and barrister Jerry Hayes, are both saying that Boris's time is up. It's if not when, and they're both backing Rishi for the top job. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Trevor, I always enjoy your column on Mondays in The Sun. Always a fantastic read, and my thanks to Jerry Hayes as well. Well, what do you think? Do you agree with that? Would Rishi Sunak be a better Prime Minister? Mark at gbnews.uk. Or are we too quick to call time on Boris's career? I spoke to Boris's biographer, Tom Bauer, and he said, underestimate this man at your peril. After this, with my fantastic panel in the news agenda, what's the problem with Labour? Why aren't they cutting through? A disastrous result for them. We'll discuss that next. And don't forget, I'll be sitting down with one of the victims of the shocking post office postmaster scandal at 10. A woman that was sent to jail for a crime she did not commit. She's in the studio very shortly. Get your questions in now, mark at gbnews.uk. A really big 2 hours to come. See you shortly.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Stephanie on email I still back Boris and I love him to bits. Stop being so critical of the big man. Brilliant. Stephanie, it is all about opinions. Now, last night's by-election in North Shropshire was a terrible defeat for Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party. But the other big losers on the night were Labour, as their vote share went down by 12.4%. So I'm going to introduce my panel at this stage to discuss whether it's not just the Tories who are in trouble. Can Labour actually bounce back from this? You'll know that I'm joined by Connor and Andre and Ingrid. Let's start with you, if I may, Ingrid.
Yes?
How do you solve a problem like Keir Starmer?
Oh, like Maria. I don't know how. I mean, throw him under a bus or something. He's not doing himself any favours, is he? He has so many opportunities to kind of like step up and he just doesn't. Do you know, I was listening to him the other day. I can't watch him, really, because he kind of, there's something about his face that he just doesn't look a grown-up man. He doesn't look like he shaves properly. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be personal. This is a horrible thing. How nasty of me.
It's your opinion.
But it is my opinion, because I really do think like that. So I'm telling you my absolute, complete, genuine thoughts. So, but I was listening to the other day on the radio and I thought, there's something about his voice as well that isn't weak. It's not that's weak. It's not manly, and he doesn't command interest in what he's saying, and I just think he's just. No, I can't explain it. Wishy-washy. He's not forthright. He isn't strong. He's had so many opportunities. I remember the days, and I'm sorry, you guys, because this is kind of like predates your birth dates, I suppose. But back in the day, you know, with Wilson and all that lot, they were just brilliant. I listened to them. I enjoyed the banter. I enjoyed the fight because it was intelligent. And they believed in what they were doing. They were doing it for the country. This is so self-serving. I don't respect any of the politicians.
But Andre.
Yeah, what I was going to say was, you know, we forget what a great force for good the Labour and trade union movement have been in the history of this country. The way that we would never have developed many of the social laws and anti-child labour laws and things like that without the Labour and trade union movement. And to see the way it has been hijacked by a group of London intellectuals and lawyers and just taken away from the people that built it. You know, you go to the working class communities that founded the Labour Party now, and they have got nothing in common with the modern Labour Party. The modern Labour Party is only interested in middle class issues like trans rights and things like that, which may well be important, but they're not important to people who want ordinary jobs and want the economy back on track. And I will tell you, it wasn't only Brexit. This had been brewing for years. The solution to the Labour Party is to boot Keir Starmer out and go back to traditional values and start talking to the voters that made that party what it was.
Connor Tomlinson, is the problem Labour or is the problem Starmer?
I actually disagree with Andre. I think the problem's pretty systemically Labour. Actually, the trade union movement seeded the grounds for their own destruction because, like my old man, it's funny that I'm sitting here because he used to work on the printing presses for the newspapers. And he's told me time and time again that the trade unions that were working in the newspapers, they were circulating sort of communist material at the time, trying to instigate a workers' revolt. So that has been drip-fed into Jeremy Corbyn is their apotheosis. And now Keir Starmer slaps a new apparently moderate coat of paint on the Labour Party. Number one, he was running a Marxist newspaper in university, so he may well have strayed from some of those values, but you know, supporting that kind of genocidal regime tars you with the same brush. And then all of the people that are on his bench, Yvette Cooper's a staunch Remainer, Claudia Webb's just been prosecuted, David Lammy, the dumbest man in Parliament.
No, sorry. He calls himself, he's the British Barack Obama.
So my point still stands, one of the dumbest men in Parliament.
Lammy's a Spurs fan and an interesting voice in politics, and of course he's in the shadow cabinet now. I do admire the guy, but I disagree with lots that he's got to say. But look, you're entitled to your view. What do you think? Will you ever vote Labour again? So much to get through. Coming up, FAQs. We're going to find out about Whisky. How's it made? What's the story? And could it be the ultimate new Christmas drink? And shortly in Mark Meets, a big story about a miscarriage of justice. A woman who went to prison who shouldn't have, and she joins me in the studio. So lots to come. See you shortly.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. This weekend we've got high pressure in charge of our weather, which brings dry and rather cloudy weather with the risk of some dense fog. And it will feel quite chilly as well. There's not much wind around over the weekend, and that means that fog will be persistent and temperatures will struggle to rise where we do see the persisting cloud and indeed fog. Now, as we take a look through the next few days, you can see certainly through tonight, we've got a lot of fog across some eastern areas of the UK. So fog warning is in force from the Met Office, and that remains in force until midday on Saturday. Elsewhere, lots of cloud overnight. Where we do see some clearer skies, though, for eastern Scotland and northeast England, we could see some frost as we start tomorrow morning. Quite windy, though, across the far southwest. And those winds will be quite gusty for a time across Cornwall. Elsewhere, though, with the light winds, it means that fog will be stubborn to clear. So for some places, it may not clear through the day on Saturday, staying gloomy and grey. To the west of the UK, some brighter spells are possible. I think the best of any sunshine will be across Scotland. Temperatures struggling, though, for many staying in single figures, maybe just getting to 10 degrees in the far southwest. That's 50 Fahrenheit, but with a breeze, it will feel cooler. And then the fog becomes more widespread again on Saturday night. We could see some fog getting into parts of Wales, southwest England as well. So for some places, grey and gloomy remains the picture for the next couple of days. Some clearer skies, again, leads to a frost across parts of Scotland, maybe northern England, perhaps parts of Wales as well, although cloud amounts will come and go through the night. Then as we go into Sunday, that fog could again persist across some parts of the country, especially through the Midlands and northern England. That's where we could see it lasting all day. Where it does, temperatures will stay close to freezing, but away from that, it'll be just that little bit colder. As we go into next week, stays grey for many, a few sunny spells and cold. Bye-bye.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Well, we've got a really big 2 hours to come. My Mark Meets guests are extraordinary. We're going to speak to the journalist and writer who unearthed this terrible scandal, the miscarriage of justice around post office postmasters. And I'll speak to a woman who was wrongly jailed for a crime she did not commit. They're both live in the studio. We'll speak to them in 3 minutes' time. Also, in FAQs, Christmas is coming. We're talking Christmas drinks. So what about whiskey? We'll speak to a whiskey expert about how that could be the perfect Yuletide tipple. And in our news agenda, should Premier League players stop playing football over Christmas? Should games be scrapped until January? What do you think about that? Plus, another great British game show coming up before the end of the show. That's a game based around a big news story of the day. This time, famous quotations from books. And After 11, live from the United States. The man that wants to destroy Twitter. He is aiming to save free speech in America and the world. Jason Miller, CEO of Getter, joins me live on the other side of the pond. So a packed 2 hours, your emails as well. But first, Karen with the headlines.
Thank you, Mark. These are your latest headlines. Cabinet Secretary Simon Case has stepped down from leading an investigation into alleged parties held in government during lockdown. His decision comes after the Cabinet Office admitted a quiz was held in his department last December. Officials say Mr. Case played no part in the event, but did speak briefly to staff before leaving. A Number 10 spokesperson said the move was made to ensure the investigation retains public confidence. The Prime Minister says he takes personal responsibility for the Conservatives' defeat in the North Shropshire by-election. Boris Johnson's comments come after the party lost a seat that it held for almost 200 years. The Lib Dem candidate, Helen Morgan, won by nearly 6,000 votes. The by-election was triggered by the resignation of Owen Paterson after he breached lobbying rules. He had a 2019 majority of almost 23,000.
Clearly, the vote in North Shropshire is a very disappointing result, and I totally understand people's frustrations. I hear what the voters are saying in North Shropshire, and in all humility, I've got to accept that verdict.
Police have confirmed the 4 young boys who died in a house fire in South London were home alone. In a Facebook post, the 2 sets of twins aged 3 and 4 were named by their grandfather as Leighton, Logan, Kyson and Bryson. A 27-year-old woman has been arrested on suspicion of child neglect. 2 teenagers have been convicted of the manslaughter of 18-year-old Hussein Chowdhury in Walthamstow. Video released by the Met Police shows Hussein and his family grappling with one of the attackers. He had come to their home under the ruse of buying a designer jacket Hussein had for sale. During the struggle, Hussein suffered a fatal stab injury to his neck. Marvin Ward and Alexis Morris, both 18 and from Ilford, will be sentenced next year. Ghislaine Maxwell has decided not to give evidence at her sex trafficking trial in New York as the defence rested its case. The British socialite told the judge there was no reason to testify as the government had not proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The 59-year-old has pleaded not guilty to sex trafficking charges. Maxwell's lawyers have portrayed her as a scapegoat targeted by prosecutors after Jeffrey Epstein's death. You are right up to date now. Back to Mark Dolan tonight.
It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, entertainment, business and sport. And I also speak to people who simply have a big story to tell. And tonight's is a very big story indeed. And it doesn't get worse than the famous post office postmaster scandal, one of the great miscarriages of justice in recent times. Between 2000 and 2014, the Post Office prosecuted 736 sub-postmasters and sub-postmistresses, an average of 1 a week, based on information from a recently installed computer system called Horizon. Some went to prison following convictions for false accounting and theft. Many were financially ruined and have described being shunned by their communities. Some have since died. After 20 years, campaigners won a legal battle to have their cases reconsidered after claiming that the computer system was flawed. Many former postmasters and postmistresses have described how the saga ruined their lives. They had to cope with the long-term impact of a criminal conviction and imprisonment, some at a time when they'd been pregnant or had young children. Marriages broke down, and courts have heard how some families believe the stress led to health conditions, addiction, and premature deaths. In December 2019, at the end of a long-running series of civil cases, the Post Office agreed to settle with 555 claimants. It accepted it had previously got things wrong in its dealings with a number of postmasters and agreed to pay £58 million in damages. The claimants received a share of £12 million after legal fees were paid. Well, joining me now is Nick Wallace, an award-winning freelance journalist and broadcaster who has been pursuing this story since 2010, when he met a taxi driver who told him his pregnant wife had been sent to prison for a crime she did not commit. Since then, he has recorded interviews with dozens of victims, insiders and experts, uncovering hundreds of documents to build up an unparalleled understanding of the story. And what a story it is. It reads like a thriller. The book is called The Great Post Office Scandal. It's winning rave reviews, the definitive account of the scandal from the journalist who pursued every twist and turn, says Mishal Hussain from the BBC. Also with us tonight is Seema Misra, who was pregnant with her second child when she was convicted of theft and sent to jail in 2010. She says that she's been suffering for 15 years as a result of this devastating saga. Seema and Nick, welcome to the show. And Seema, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and also having the courage to revisit this most horrific tale.
True, it's nearly done, but still hanging on, still going on anyway.
Yeah. When did things go wrong?
Well, in my case, from the very first day when I took over the post office, but they've been denying and saying that you're the only one. You know, we're having so many other post office, they're doing fine, you're the only one. From the only one to 1,000, nearly 1,000 now.
Yeah, correct, and the truth is out. Did you notice anything strange about the software when you opened your business or when you took over?
Not to start with, because I was being told it will get sorted out, you'll get error notice and all that. But like sometime down the line, I did ask for it and they just like ignored.
So when was the first moment that you realised there would be action against you? Did you get a letter, a call? What happened?
Yeah, well, when the auditor came in, I've been asking for the help for such a long time, but after a couple of years when they came, and I told them there will be a shortfall. And I told it will be sorted out. Why post office, that they will find out I haven't taken a single penny.
Yeah.
Forget about 75,000. I haven't taken a single penny.
And so you flagged up that there were issues?
Yeah, I did. Been asking for help. I've been asking for help.
And you said there will be a shortfall. Can you please come and help? And after 2 years they did.
They did, yeah.
And they reassured you there was nothing to worry about.
No, they said I thought it would be fine. And then after they took the post office away in January, and then in December I've been summoned to court.
So you lost your business?
Everything.
And tell me about those months when you were waiting for court. Were you working? What did you do?
Nothing. I wasn't working, so business was gone. But I was still believing. I'm a very God-fearing person. I was thinking it will be all fine.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything wrong. Nothing wrong happened with me till the last minute.
Yeah.
Till the last minute, I was thinking it will be all okay.
Yes. And did you have good legal advice whilst you were preparing for the court case?
My very first barrister, he said to me, plead guilty, then you have a lesser sentence.
That's crazy.
And then I said, why should I plead guilty for the crime which I haven't done it?
Yeah.
I said, no, say you're fighting at the post office. I said, no, I don't want to plead guilty. I want to, I won't be able to live with a lie. So I pleaded not guilty.
Did the barrister believe that you were innocent?
First one, I don't know, because he was asking me to plead guilty. But the second one, then, I changed my solicitors and everything. But then it was it was good, really good.
This second solicitor,
yes,
believed your story,
yes,
and supported you.
Oh yeah, definitely, big time.
And I mean, roughly, how long was that court case? How long was the trial?
It was keep on adjourning every time because the post office was not giving the documents on time and all that. It was delaying because of them, and it dragged on for nearly a year and a half.
Do you think that was incompetence or strategic?
Because they were hiding. They were hiding because now we know they knew. Well, while my trial was going on, there's issue, but they covered it up.
So how long
roughly was that court case? Can you remember how long it ran?
Yeah, nearly just 2 years.
And can you just tell me what life was like? I mean, in just living in a courtroom for 2 years.
It was just till last minute, Mark, I was thinking it will be all fine. I never thought I would go to the prison, because why would I?
Yeah, you didn't believe it would go to court,
No.
and then you didn't believe it would end in a prison sentence.
Yeah.
You will be acquitted.
That's it. I feel like anybody can see I haven't done anything wrong, nothing wrong.
And were your team confident of victory?
If I was confident of victory as well. I think it will be all fine. They asked me to bring the bags, I never did. I said, why would I bring my bags? Because I'll be coming back home. It was my son's 10th birthday. I said, we will come home, we'll celebrate in the evening. I didn't even took a single bag, I took nothing at all. I'll be coming back home.
And the next day, you went into jail.
Yeah, when the judge gave me the sentence, I was shocked. I don't know what happened after that. When I opened my eyes.
So you heard the word guilty?
The guilty came 2 weeks beforehand.
Okay.
So the sentencing was on 11th of November.
Did you know there would be a sentence, or did you hope you could still walk free?
I thought people walk free. They probably, I don't know. I never even thought of
suspended sentence or
could
something?
be anything. I thought it could probably be anything, It won't be a prison sentence.
Tell me about that first moment, hearing the word guilty, knowing that you were not guilty. What were your emotions at that point?
That time I was thinking, I had a faith in jury. I thought, did they even understood the case? How can they say there's a black and white things here, the case been adjourned every time because of the post office not giving the documents on time and all that. How did they even understood the case? And then I thought, okay, it's fine. Judge knows it. It will be fine. It will be fine.
And then you get a custodial sentence. And how long were you in jail for?
Just under 4 months.
And tell me about that time.
I never thought I'm going to come out alive from there. And I was so worried about I was pregnant. If I wouldn't been pregnant, I definitely would have killed myself, because that is like going to the prison. It is so, I'm not saying anything, but for me, I think that's really, really wrong. Yeah. For me, I was like, I shouldn't have been there. I was so ashamed of myself. I brought a bad name to my family and all that. For my elder son and everybody, how are they going to face the word?
And you knew you were innocent.
Innocent.
But winding up in prison makes you seem guilty to the outside world.
Yeah.
Did your family and friends continue to support you?
My family, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Did you lose any friends?
Some friends. We lost some friends, but we made some proper good friends as well.
Yeah, and you've got one next to you.
Yes, next to me.
Nick Wallace, you've written the great post office scandal. If only it was a work of fiction, because it's a page-turner. But it's not. And you came across this story in 2010.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Through Seema's husband. I was working in a BBC local radio station, and we got a tweet from Seema's husband's company, Surrey Cars, saying, can I bid for the BBC Surrey taxi account? And of course, we were such a tiny station, we didn't have a taxi account. If we did, I would have just forwarded the tweet to management.
Yeah.
And so I said something flippant like, oh, well, will you come on air and tell us some of your great stories? And he said, oh, I've got a story to tell you. Give me a call. So after the show, I gave Devinder a call. This was while Seema was in prison, and the poor guy was in bits. He was we spoke for 40 minutes. He was crying. He was in a desperate way. But he was absolutely adamant that his wife had been thrown in prison for a crime she didn't commit, and it was down to a dodgy computer system at the post office where she worked. So I went to see him, did an interview with him. His story was very, very similar. And the story was already in the public domain in a very small way. Computer Weekly had done an investigation a year previously, and there was a campaigning group called the Justice for Sub-Postmasters Alliance. So Devinder was saying, look, it's not just me. There is a campaigning organisation. This is happening all around the country. And the BBC hadn't done anything on it. So I took it to my boss, and 2 or 3 months later, we put out an investigation, and that was the first time it had been on broadcast media.
Amazing journalism.
Well, it was just a cracking story. I mean, if Devinder was telling the truth, we were looking at a very, very serious miscarriage of justice. And then the more I found out about it, the more I realised we were looking at potentially a very serious miscarriage of justice on an industrial scale. And it was only in 2019 when the High Court sided with the postmasters after they'd fought for years to get it to the point where they could even get the funding to take it to the High Court, that suddenly the whole egg was cracked open and the house of cards fell over. The Post Office was shown up for what they were, and it ended up with Seema's conviction being quashed earlier this year.
Do you think if it wasn't for that chance encounter that actually this injustice would have prevailed?
I mean, it's hard to say. Certainly, I wouldn't have been involved in the story in the same way.
Might have taken longer. It might never have happened.
I mean, Alan Bates, who set up the Justice for Sub-Postmasters Alliance, is a dogged campaigner, and he managed to get parliamentarians, MPs from representing various different sub-postmasters all around the country behind him. And it was them that initially forced the Post Office back in 2013 to do a proper investigation into their IT system. But then when the investigators, a company called Second Sight, actually looked into this and told the Post Office, you have a problem with your computer system, the Post Office went into cover-up mode. They shut them down, they sacked their investigators, and they denied there had been any miscarriages of justice for 6 years. And it wasn't, again, until that High Court case cracks it open. So there's not just the scandal of these erroneous prosecutions, as you said, one a week for 14 years, but it was the cover-up that then followed, which delayed and denied justice to hundreds of people. That is scandalous. No one has been censured or held to account for it.
So the Post Office thought they could essentially bully people out of justice?
Yeah, with their money and proximity to power. They are the oldest secular state agency in the world.
And a trusted brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
and
the
which
NHS.
they played on to their, you know, to basically say, well, how could we have done something this bad? We don't do that. We're the Post Office. We're the cuddly Post Office. But behind the scenes, they were aggressively pursuing this fiction. There was nothing wrong with their computer system because they'd bet the farm on it. If they admitted that some of these prosecutions were potentially unsafe, the whole thing would unravel, which it now eventually has. But they were just relying on the fact that they could completely outgun these sub-postmasters all the way through and bully them out of their case. And they very nearly did so. Had it not been for a superb judge and a superb legal team who saw the Post Office's arguments for the fallacy that they were in this High Court case in 2019, the truth might never have come out.
But was this approach from the Post Office, in your judgment, your journalistic judgment, was it sort of systemic, was it institutional, or was it just a handful of individuals that made a very bad call?
It was systemic and institutional, and I bet you, if you go to the Post Office now, there will be people saying, oh, they've got off on a technicality. The culture of the Post Office was that we can do no wrong, we are the guardians of public money. These sub-postmasters, wow, they're all a bit dodgy. They're all a bit tempted by all this cash that we put in their, you know, in their branches, which they might be tempted to use to prop up their failing businesses. That culture hasn't changed. No matter how much the Post Office senior management tries to pretend it has.
What raises an eyebrows is how many corrupt postmasters there would be. I mean, it belies reality.
Of course. Right, you
if
have
it's an isolated case, there's a bad apple in every barrel, right?
Seema was a model citizen. She's got commendations from the police that she did when she used to work for Bedfordshire Police. Yeah. She has to work, anyone who becomes a sub-postmaster has to go through a rigorous selection process. You cannot get there unless you are spotless.
It's a trustworthy position, so you would have to demonstrate trust.
So why were all these people suddenly turning to crime? It beggars belief. But that is the institutional belief that the Post Office had.
And what about this software, Horizon software? I mean, is that at the heart of the problem?
Yeah, it never worked.
Right.
In the mid-90s, a decision was taken to automate the Post Office. So a PFI project was set up, which was rolled out into the Post Office estate, 20,000 post offices. It was described at the time as the largest single non-military IT system in Europe. It was made by Fujitsu, and it didn't work. It was fundamentally broken. They could not get it to a point where it functioned properly, and yet it was signed off because, again, they'd spent too much money, the government had spent too much money on potentially letting it fail. So this shonky system was just rolled out and let loose on these poor sub-postmasters. And sub-postmasters, under the terms of their contract, are required to make good any discrepancies in their accounts. The Horizon computer system was throwing up phantom discrepancies, which Seema was suffering from. And I've spoken to so many people who start to doubt their own sanity because they are looking at a computer system that cannot add up properly, and they're being held liable for serious amounts of money, £74,000 in Seema's case. When at Seema's trial, the judge told the jury there is no direct evidence of theft. There was no evidence of theft. And that was the case with all these sub-postmasters that were investigated. No one could find any evidence of them taking any money.
What went wrong in Seema's case the first time round? Were the jury just deluded? Did the judge make a bad call?
It's this issue of disclosure. As Seema said, the Post Office were being asked by Seema's defence team to give them information about the computer system that would allow them to examine it properly.
Right.
And they dragged their heels, they retained the information, and this has been echoed and reverberates through almost every single situation right up to the High Court case. The Post Office have the money and they have the information, and they are only going to let it out if it's dragged screaming from them. And so in Seema's case, where she was dealing, she had a computer expert, Professor Charles McLaughlin, very august professional, working for her, trying to, and the complaints went right up to the first day of the trial. The Post Office have not given us the information we need to check out this computer system, and therefore the judge was able to say, well, we think the computer system was working fine, you have to make a decision based on this inference.
And then the judge jails a pregnant woman.
Well, that I will never understand. Seema was never any threat to the public.
I want to ask Seema about, how she's doing now, but can you give me a sense of the scale of human damage that was experienced as a result of what happened?
Well, Seema's a very strong woman, and she has got through this. I don't know how she's got through this, but I've spoken to other people who have lain for weeks in darkened rooms, unable to go out, unable to face the public. Because don't forget, sub-postmasters are very public, they're very visible within their communities. They take on the job because they want to serve and they want to help people. So when this veil of shame and suspicion falls upon them, they're removed from their jobs, they're suspended and then sacked and then charged with criminal offences. It happens in a very, very public, very, very visible way. And these people just want to help, they just wanted to serve, and suddenly they are the centre of attention for all the wrong reasons, and coping with that, especially when you're told that this is your fault, your mistake, it really brought some people to their knees. And we know that some people have committed suicide as a result of this. Some people are still suffering to the extent that they're on medication because of what happened to them 20 years ago. And it's through the exoneration that they're starting to begin to rebuild their lives. But so many of them were never even in a position to ask for help. They've suffered in silence and isolation for years. It's broken lives. I spoke to one guy who'd had his conviction quashed a couple of months ago. And I said, so now what? And he said, well, when I was convicted, my father disowned me. I haven't spoken to him since.
And is it over now for all of the victims?
You answer that, Seema.
No, it's not. We still have to prove ourselves. We still have to prove ourselves. It's still going on. It's just like we hear all these big action words and everything. The words and everything. It's not just the words. We need action now. So.
So what do you need? I mean, do you have a legal team working on this?
Yes, I have a very good legal team representing.
And are you appealing, or what exactly is the process?
It's still going on, as Mark mentioned. We still have to prove ourselves. After having the conviction overturned as well.
Yeah. So are you pursuing them for damages? Is that?
That's the process. That's the process going on at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, have you received any compensation?
Will I say compensation? I got some, but not the compensation. No, as I mentioned, it's just like a fight. It's still going on. They're still dragging it. It was 23rd of April.
So have the Post Office changed their attitude now, given the fact that they've been so resolutely
They say that they
truthful?
have, and I mean, the point is, Seema's conviction was quashed on the 23rd of April this year. She was convicted in November 2010.
Yep.
So she had to wait 11 years for justice. She received an interim compensation payment, which the government underwrote because the Post Office is basically a busted flush. It can no longer trade as a going concern with all these compensation payments hanging over them. But still, no one has received full and fair compensation for what has happened to them. We've got a historical shortfall scheme that was set up last year, which Alistair Carmichael MP raised some serious questions about in the House earlier this week. You've got the announcement of compensation that will be made available to people like Seema, but she still has to go through a negotiation process to actually get that full and final figure out of the Post Office. Now, Seema deserves millions of pounds. There are 72 people whose convictions have been overturned. They deserve millions of pounds in compensation. They are now at the beginning of a negotiation process whereby the government and the Post Office will seek to get the least possible money paid to them. They just want what's fair. It could be something that ends up in the middle, but the government are relying on wearing people down so that eventually they accept their offer and walk away.
It could take years? What do you
I
think?
sincerely hope it. Well, see, if the negotiation doesn't work, then it goes to litigation, and that could take years.
That could take years.
Yeah. And so tell me now about your health. How are you feeling?
I'm not a criminal anymore. I'm not convicted criminal anymore. Definitely feeling much better. Much better. Feeling I can just go out and,
hold your head high.
Hold my head high. Like, I wasn't mad.
Yeah.
I wasn't mad fighting for so many years. I wasn't lying. I was telling the truth. So it's definitely, it does make a difference in our life. But it makes you think as well, is this the world we're living in?
Yeah.
Because we're getting penalized for telling the truth.
Yeah.
Here, because I got 2 young kids as well, and we tell the kids, when you tell me the truth, I want, let's sit down and talk. Tell me the truth, what happened. Here, when we tell them the truth, we were screaming, and we getting penalized for telling the truth, basically.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
So definitely I don't know the pain will ever go away.
No, and you won't get those years back, the years of anxiety.
Definitely won't. No.
Has it affected your health at all? I mean, mental or physical?
Yeah, of course, both ways.
Really? What about your mental health, for example?
I wasn't I was so ashamed. I wasn't even going out.
Really?
I wasn't going out. My kids haven't attended, we didn't celebrate the birthdays or anything. What if, I was thinking,
what will people think?
People will think, they come and say, oh my God, okay, so he's Seema's son. And for my eldest son, when I used to take him to cricket, I used to park my car that way. So, I can see the match, but nobody else can see me. That kind of things, they can never come, that time can never come back. We didn't have any family time, going out for walks or anything, nothing like that at all.
And to spend some of your pregnancy in jail as well. What were the conditions like inside?
Oh my God, I was so scared, it was just I was worried, what if I get contaminated with something, or because they were like a blood and all that, it was terrible. Yeah. I was so worried about my baby health, if something happened.
And you gave birth after you came out of prison, is that right?
Yeah.
And what about your physical health?
Yeah, I gave birth with a tag on.
That's not the kind of bracelet you want, is it?
No, it's just...
Not a good thing at all. And what about your physical health? I mean, has it taken its toll on you?
Yes, definitely. I was size 12, and now it's just like and no, definitely. It's just I don't want to go out and all that. For all those years and everything, I not going out for walk and everything. I didn't just drained myself out.
So it's kind of it isolated you, and now you're
my health issues as well, and with the arthritis and everything. It's just everything adds up.
Yeah. And how about your husband? I mean, he must be a hero to you.
Of course, yeah. Definitely. That's the reason we are here today.
Yeah.
It was his courage that he brought Nick in. And if you were sitting around and say, oh my God, we are the victim.
Yeah.
Then that's it. We would have been victim then.
Well, it's a shocking story.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you've been acquitted and that, justice was done. But I also hope that you get your compensation, which is richly deserved, because it will pay you back for what you've been through, and also allow you to get on with your life and move forward. That's
definitely
what you want, isn't it?
For all those
you want this to be over. No more lawyer emails, no more phone calls, right?
True. Sometimes, forget, okay, I'm not going to see my email now. But it's just for all those people, there's so many of us, we've been fighting for such a long time. We want a life back for everybody.
The Great Post Office Scandal is out now. Here it is. It's a weighty tome, but it's just dripping in laudatory quotes. Ian Hislop says, an extraordinary journalistic expose of a huge miscarriage of justice. The Great Post Office Scandal is by Nick Wallace. The fight to expose a multi-million-pound IT disaster which put innocent people in jail. My thanks to both of you for a really important story, and thank you so much for coming in. Lots more to come. Should the Premier League scrap football matches over Christmas and the New Year due to the Omicron virus? We'll discuss that. And next in FAQs, everything you wanted to know about whiskey, including the fact that it's the hottest new Christmas drink. We'll discuss all of that with a top whiskey expert. So lots to get through, but first, the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. This weekend we've got high pressure in charge of our weather, which brings dry and rather cloudy weather with the risk of some dense fog. And it will feel quite chilly as well. There's not much wind around over the weekend, and that means that fog will be persistent and temperatures will struggle to rise where we do see the persisting cloud and indeed fog. Now, as we take a look through the next few days, you can see certainly through tonight we've got a lot of fog across some eastern areas of the UK. So fog warning is in force from the Met Office, and that remains in force until midday on Saturday. Elsewhere, lots of cloud overnight. Where we do see some clearer skies, though, for eastern Scotland and northeast England, we could see some frost as we start tomorrow morning. Quite windy, though, across the far southwest. And those winds will be quite gusty for a time across Cornwall. Elsewhere, though, with the light winds, it means that fog will be stubborn to clear. So for some places, it may not clear through the day on Saturday, staying gloomy and grey. To the west of the UK, some brighter spells are possible. I think the best of any sunshine will be across Scotland. Temperatures struggling, though, for many staying in single figures, maybe just getting to 10 degrees in the far southwest. That's 50 Fahrenheit, but with a breeze, it will feel cooler. And then the fog becomes more widespread again on Saturday night. We could see some fog getting into parts of Wales, southwest England as well. So for some places, grey and gloomy remains the picture for the next couple of days. Some clearer skies again leads to a frost across parts of Scotland, maybe northern England, perhaps parts of Wales as well, although cloud amounts will come and go through the night. Then as we go into Sunday, that fog could again persist across some parts of the country, especially through the Midlands and northern England. That's where we could see it lasting all day. Where it does, temperatures will stay close to freezing, but away from that, it'll be just that little bit colder. As we go into next week, stays grey for many, a few sunny spells and cold. Bye-bye.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
I can't imagine why I'm so excited about frequently asked questions tonight. As Christmas approaches, there is an inevitable focus on Christmas drinks. Eggnog, mulled wine, I'll be honest, I'll take anything I can get my hands on. But what about whiskey as a Yuletide tipple? Apparently it is this year's hot Christmas drink, although you can have it chilled as well. So to find out more about this ancient, iconic drink, and why you might want to go for it on the 25th, I'm delighted to welcome Dawn Davis from the Whisky Exchange. Hi, Dawn.
Hi.
Hey, tell me about the Whisky Exchange. Sounds like a club I should be a member of.
Everyone should be a member of the Whisky Exchange. So we're a retail shop. We've been going for 20 years. It's run by two brothers who started the business, and they have an amazing passion for whiskey. Sekinda's an incredible collector. We also have 3 shops now, so one in Covent Garden, London Bridge, and Great Portland Street.
And are the Whisky Exchange online as well?
Yes, the Whisky
Exchange. So my viewers across the United Kingdom and the world.
And the world, in fact.
What's the website?
It's www.thewhiskeyexchange.com, whiskey without an E.
Yes, let's start with that. This is frequently asked questions. Yes. It's all the obvious questions about the topic. Yeah. So are you supposed to spell whiskey with an E or not?
So traditionally, whiskey from Scotland was spelt without an E. Whiskey from Ireland was spelt with an E, and whiskey from America was spelt with an E. So it really is dependent on where you are in the world.
And is that E spelling in America, is that linked to perhaps sort of Irish expats?
Probably. I mean, I don't really know the background of why.
And that could just be a language thing. It just the Irish language of Gaelic, which is somehow historically it's got that E. That E fell in and it fell out in Scotland.
Yeah, and the Scottish don't like it.
Do we know which country whiskey is native to?
So there's a big debate whether whiskey started in Ireland or in Scotland. I don't think we'll never really know the answer, and I don't want to start some sort of mass kind of fight, brawl.
Yeah, everything's very tribal these days, so we don't want to fall out over whiskey, do we?
But, you know, to be honest, they could have been anywhere in the world because everyone people were doing distillation for a long time. So, you know, I think it was just the tradition of whiskey.
Similar story with beer, it's hard to say where beer started, isn't it?
Beer, wine, I mean, so many of these things, like they keep finding.
And of course, they have happened in parallel.
Yeah, I mean, and that's probably what happened. Some dude was like, "Oh, look, I'm going to make this beer out of my grain, and then I'm going to distill it in some still, and I'm just going to drink it." You know.
Do we know how long whiskey has been around in its sort of broad incarnation? I mean, how long have we been drinking whiskey? Do we think?
A hell of a long time.
Thousands of years.
Probably not thousands, but hundreds.
Well, yeah.
For sure, because if you think back to, you know, when it was sort of you weren't meant to be drinking it, and it was all these illicit pot stills and things like that.
What's whiskey made from?
So whiskey is made from a grain. You can have malted, when you see a malt, if you see the word malt on the label, that means it's malted barley.
Right.
So that's a very specific kind of process that happens with the barley. If you see something that says grain, it could be corn, it could be wheat, and it could be unmalted barley. But mainly nowadays it's wheat.
Right.
And then, of course, you have things like bourbon, which is a high percentage of corn and things. So it really depends, but it's always got to be grain.
And is bourbon American?
Bourbon is American, yes.
And a lot of American whiskies are made from corn and wheat, are they?
So yes, a lot of times, so to be called a bourbon, you have to have 51% corn as part of what we call your mash bill. So you have different types of grain and wheat and spirits. So
it's called a mash
bill.
Mash bill. And is that because you get mashed when you're on it and then you get the bill?
That is a really, really interesting point. I have never thought about it. It will now become forevermore the reason it's called a mash bill.
Yeah, because you'll have heard about beer goggles. Do you know about beer goggles?
Yes, I do know about beer goggles.
Of course, for anyone that doesn't know, that's when somebody looks more attractive than they actually are. Try whiskey goggles.
Whiskey goggles.
Oh, boy.
On steroids.
Yeah, too right.
the thing you get from different types of grain, so corn gives you sweetness.
Okay.
Rye, which is a grain also they use a lot in bourbon, gives you spice. And sort of barley and wheat give you sort of a softer, rounder palate.
And so, is malted barley the main recipe for most Scotch whiskies?
When you see single malt.
Single malt.
Yes,
so that's one grain. It's one kind of barley, and it's malted. What does malting do? How do you malt something?
So what you do is you take the barley and you need to convert the starch to sugar.
Right.
So you have to start almost like the germination. So you keep it kind of a little bit moist, and just as it's starting to germinate, and those starches turn to sugars, you stop it by cooking it. And that then just stops the process, and you then have all the sugars. And of course, to ferment anything, you take sugar and yeast and make alcohol. So
and
super simple.
The live cultures in yeast eat the sugar and then convert it into alcohol.
Release CO2 and alcohol.
Aren't they rather angelic?
They're fabulous. I love yeast.
Those live cultures.
God, I love a yeast.
And so here we are. And what about popularity? Is whiskey from Scotland the most popular in the world, would you say?
I mean, it is hugely popular, and it's been growing in popularity phenomenally over the last, I would say, 10, 20 years. We've really seen, especially malt whiskey, take a trajectory like this.
Because it's seen as sophisticated, isn't it?
I think people have really developed I think when I always talk to people about sort of trends and how things change is, we all start our drinking journey on soft drinks and orange juices and things like that.
Speak for yourself.
I like you. Then we go into kind of vodka with a sweet mixer.
Yes.
And then we go into, say, something with a bit more flavour, because maybe we're starting to drink tea or coffee, so then bitterness comes in, so maybe gin. And then sort of we go through into these brown spirits. And I think we've come into this age where brown spirits and aged spirits, like whiskies, are just super popular. And actually they're very good investments nowadays on certain styles. So there's a lot of reasons people are getting into
I think it's wonderful. It doesn't go off, does it? How long can you keep whiskey on the shelf?
So you can keep it as long as you want. Just make sure you keep it upright.
Yeah.
So don't lie it flat like you would a wine.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it's because it's high ABV, it's 40% plus. That holds the flavors very, very well. So it won't ever really go off unless you kind of really abuse it, like putting it in direct sunlight.
Well, I absolutely love whiskey. I'm very excited about the Whiskey Exchange, and I look forward to getting all of my customer points for being such a good customer.
Well, absolutely.
Especially over Christmas. But, I mean, obviously, I've got lots of news to present for the next hour and 15 minutes. So to help me to sample some of these, I'm going to use... Do you remember great kings and queens used to have a royal taster that would do the eating and drinking on their behalf?
I like it.
I'm going to pick someone with a more experienced palate and liver than myself. And it's my fantastic panellist, the presenter and journalist Andre Walker. Andre, come on down. Now, Andre is an enthusiast of your product.
He is very excited.
Here he comes.
I brought my own bottle.
Listen, that's so good of you.
I was drinking it on the train on the way here.
Well, look, I think it's very good that my panellists do such great preparation for their appearances.
It was purely research.
Well, of course it was. I know you're the ultimate professional, and you've got the steady hand of a surgeon. Well, look, grab a seat. I think Sebastian and Matt can actually get you on camera next to my lovely whiskey expert.
There we go. Look,
I think we can
to sit on the stool.
definitely do that.
Don't fall off.
I didn't drink that much.
Dawn, Andre's an expert, as are you, and I'm just a fan. So where should we start?
So I'm going to start with the Deanston 18.
Oh, brilliant.
This is a wee distillery that's just outside Stirling. So it's a Highland whiskey.
Part of the world.
And lovely part of the world. And do you want to have a little smell?
Yeah, I'll have a little swill.
So whiskey is often aged in two types of casks, ex-bourbon casks and ex-sherry casks. And this is ex-bourbon. And what that's going to give you oftentimes is a lovely sweetness.
Yeah.
In terms of sort of vanillas and soft spices. But then this is gorgeous. It's got sort of a little bit of kind of almost perfume.
Would you like some?
I'll just drink out of the bottle. No, I'm just joking.
I think we should get you a glass. It seems a little churlish.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Yes, you may.
I've often been told that you've got to add water to it. Mm-hmm. I like that. Just water it down a little bit with just not warm water, but room temperature.
So what people do to add water is oftentimes if the alcohol is feeling a little bit high, a little bit hot, if you just drop a couple of drops of water in, especially, so you have a lot of whiskies is around 40 to 46. Yeah. You can have what these things called cask strength whiskies, which literally come off out of the cask and no dilution to them. That's when people actually sometimes like a little drop of water. I like to drink mine neat, but hey.
Do you? Now, I was a member of the Water of Life Society, which was a whiskey appreciation society at uni, which is why I got such bad grades. But I got a first in whiskey drinking, so and it served me well.
Fantastic.
But we tried lots of whiskies from sort of some fantastic distilleries in Scotland, and I was amazed at the difference in taste when you do add water.
What water does is it softens the alcohol, but two, it actually releases the flavours. And the reason we're tasting in these glasses is, for me, they're better than, say, a tumbler or something, because you get a lovely bit of air in, and like a wine, like whiskey sometimes needs a little bit of air.
But I thought you had these because I don't know if they can see that, you'd warm it up like that.
You don't want to warm up alcohol, because if you warm up the alcohol, all you're doing is getting alcohol coming into your nose.
Oh, so it's just vaporising it?
Yeah, so, well, not but it's going to highlight the alcohol as well.
Now, I don't want... It feels bad because both of these are closed. I'm not...
Get out of it.
The one
Get
is
out
open.
of it. You've invited...
Is one of them open?
Yes, the Christmas one.
Right, well, let's do that, because let's not break open. I mean, you've got... Describe hedonism.
So hedonism... I brought hedonism because I think it's quite interesting that...
Because you knew Andre would be here tonight.
no, hang on a second.
This is the man that travels on the train with whiskey.
You phoned me up. You told me to come in to do this specially.
I did.
Don't tell her not to open the hedonism. Right, that's what we were looking forward to.
I think this is like Pandora's box.
Yeah, this
we'll
is
keep
the
it closed.
Get me a pint, we'll be sorted.
Don't panic.
What I'm really worried about is that later in the show you might say something you actually think, and we'll all get taken off air. So this one's open, and this is a Christmas malt.
Yeah,
so look, why don't you have a drop? Can you tell me? I'm going to have a whiff of it because... that's nice. That's creamy.
Yeah, this is one we've released for Christmas.
What's a good amount, by the way?
That's probably enough.
Good. Not for Andre, it's not.
No,
absolutely.
I'm worried about him coming back on afterwards.
Well, you're very kind.
So this is from the Orkney Islands.
It's a beautiful sight seeing us on the monitor.
Grab a seat because we want to get your handsome face on camera.
What's your verdict? So smooth.
So this is from Orkney. I can't disclose the distillery, but Orkney will give you a really strong hint. And this has got a little bit of peat to it. Oh my goodness.
Do you know what to do? I like sucking air through it, but you can't have too much if you suck air through it.
Oh my
Andre, you had me at sucking.
I know. That's the first time I've heard that.
Okay, what about... By the way, this must be like...
I love the peatiness in that. That's similar to the Bowmore with the peatiness.
That's got a little bit of peatiness, but it's a sort of heather honey peat.
Is this like the softest, easiest interview you've ever done? I mean, there's no friction, there's no resistance, is there? You basically got a whiskey aficionado next to you.
To be honest,
like honey,
normally when I do interviews, I am the most popular person because I bring the booze.
Well, yeah, you do.
So,
you do
like, already I have an upper hand.
Well, so that's brilliant. The next couple of questions for you.
Yes.
Clock's against us, but what about mixers? Yes or no?
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking earlier about, like, I love a whiskey highball, and that's literally like a very soft whiskey, like a grain whiskey or maybe a Japanese whiskey. Ice and soda. It's one of the nicest drinks. Also,
but wait, what's the what do you mix with?
Soda.
Oh, soda.
Just a little
and when you say soda, do you mean fizzy water, or do you mean an American sense of a sweet?
No, I mean a fizzy water.
Actually,
soda,
fizzy water.
Not
what about sweetened mixers? What about lemonade? What
I like
about
ginger ale?
Dry ginger ale,
yes,
nice.
Yeah, dry ginger ale. You know
what about them? There's a popular American drink called Coca-Cola. I don't know if you're familiar with it. What's the verdict?
It's a mixer for vodka.
I mean,
okay,
surely that's a crime against whiskey, isn't it?
Okay, so I'm going to say this. However you want to drink is how you should drink it. However you enjoy anything
pint
is how you should drink it.
Right. Shall we plug the lovely brands because they've been so kind to...
Can I say to you, you asked me to taste, that one is absolutely sensational. It's honey, it's creamy, it's got the slight peatiness, so anyone who likes a Bowmore or a Lafroig will really like that. But the problem is with Islays, they tend to be very aggressive. That is not aggressive.
This isn't Isla, this is from Orkney, so this is a little bit more gentle.
So well done to a fine Christmas malt
and this is only available at the Whisky Exchange.
Okay, and it's just called a fine Christmas malt.
And we release a different Christmas malt every year.
Whiskey Exchange, and then we've got Hedonism
by Compass Box.
With a hint of vanilla, which we like. And then the first one we started on, which...
And that's Deanston 18.
That's lovely, but that's a very classical whiskey, isn't it?
Super easy
And can I say that you're always safe getting intimate with an 18-year-old?
Yes, allegedly.
I speak from experience.
That's because you're a star in the 2000s, not the 70s.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm part of the woke generation of presenters.
I wasn't expecting that when you were going to talk about Deanston 18. That was like...
Do you guys like whiskey? Mark at gbnews.uk. How do you have your whiskey? And let me know that. By the way, if you want to know how I like my whiskey, I would just go for A single malt. I do love my great sort of single malt. Or maybe a Jameson and a couple of cubes of ice.
Absolutely
And
fine.
then what I like to do is I let the ice melt a little and it sort of it breaks up the whiskey a little bit and it's cold and it's refreshing. But if there's no ice, I'll have it anyway.
I think a little bit of water makes it so much better, but people do disagree with that.
It just depends on what the whiskey is.
Yeah,
And it
well,
depends what you
that's
like.
a thrill. So the website is, once again, Whisky Exchange. So Google Whisky Exchange. And my thanks to Dawn Davis for getting us slightly merry. Brilliant stuff. Well, lots more to come. We're going to speak to the man who is hoping to rival Twitter with a brand new social media platform. It's called Getter. Its CEO is Jason Miller. He's live at 11. Plus, is religion outdated? Do you think we'll still have religion in 200 years' time? We'll discuss that with my panel in the news agenda. Don't forget, we've got a great British game show coming up and lots more stories as well. And it's going to be all the more exciting because Andre's been heavily refreshed in the last few minutes. So I guarantee the last hour won't be boring. See you in 2.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Well, we've got a fabulous last hour of the show. With me until midnight, political commentator Connor Tomlinson, broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant, and the fabulous commentator and journalist Andre Walker, who's in a very relaxed state. What his agent would call, his management would call an emotional state.
Tired and emotional.
Tired and emotional, but still
I'm more emotional.
loads of
Think
fun.
about me. I've got to do this sober with these 2.
Yeah, I know, that's not ideal.
These
let's be honest.
2? What have I done?
The gloves are off. They've kicked off. The festive season usually offers a bumper calendar of football in the Premier League, but with coronavirus spreading through the playing squads, just half of this weekend's fixtures are scheduled to go ahead. Last night at Stamford Bridge, Chelsea were held to a 1-1 draw against Everton, which my producer Liam is not happy about, and the match took place in front of a noticeably smaller crowd with several empty seats in the stands. So with cases mounting and some fans keeping clear of the turnstiles, should the Premier League shut down over Christmas and New Year? What do you think, Connor? Should they bite the bullet? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Omicron's everywhere now, isn't it?
Well, I'd like to know, are these cases or are the footballers actually getting ill? Because if it's just Omicron, as South Africa have already told us, it's essentially a head cold, as you said in your monologue. So take some
I would conjecture, I would put my house on the fact that Harry Kane, Steven Gerrard and others have played with the flu in the past.
Exactly. You've definitely played with a common cold and ran around the pitch. I'm surprised, actually, they're not more concerned, as GB News has talked about in the past, about the amazing amount of cases of myocarditis among footballers. Who was the Barcelona player who's just had a massive problem, been hospitalised?
Oh, yeah. Well, I know that there's speculation about quite a few athletes, and his name escapes me. Certainly my view is that you've got to look at every case. If something has happened to an athlete, you should investigate and you should have an open mind. What you don't want to do is brush it under the carpet and say, nothing to see here.
And it's incredibly irresponsible to shut it down as well, because you're not just talking about all of the big league clubs, for example, who can weather the storm with the TV money and the advertising. You're talking about all the little league clubs who want to get a good start, where lots of players are getting their starts and then move upwards. You're crippling the social mobility, just as if you were with the Super League.
Yeah. There are several leading cardiologists who have said there is no connection between COVID-19 vaccines and what's happening to some athletes around the world. So they very much push back on that. I'm not going to take sides on that one here at GB News. As Connor rightly said, we have an open mind. And I think that we're here as journalists to investigate every angle. Ingrid, what do you think about the Premier League? I mean, notwithstanding whether they're properly ill from COVID or not, I guess it's not very sustainable, is it, in the short term, to have football at this moment in time?
Well, first of all, I want to say I couldn't care less, because I really don't enjoy football. I don't know any of the players, don't know any of the teams. And when it is kind of sharp end of the wedge and it's World Cup, then I get slightly excited. So I just want to put that out there. But not being selfish about this, it was Frank, and I don't know his other name. He said it wouldn't make any difference at all. It's kind of implying that it's a stay of execution. So you stop it now, but it's not going to stop it in the end. So why it's not worth doing. But the interesting thing is that, funnily enough, going back to the COVID thing as well, a significant number, and that's a quote, of players are unvaccinated. And the other day, my daughter, we were talking about it, she said so many people, and I'm sorry to do this, but I do want to pick up on this because I think it's really important, because it isn't being discussed and investigated. A lot of the spectators are having heart attacks in the stands, and the games are stopped because of it. And spectators obviously have to be vaccinated to go in. And that is a real rise in the number of heart attacks that are happening. So it does need to be investigated, because this is no coincidence.
Well, look, Andre, I wish we had longer, but, I mean, that's the point. You know, you have to actually always identify why people get ill under any circumstances. And we've seen all sorts of head injuries and other issues in professional football that have been investigated, and rightly so. There's even a link between heading the ball in the 50s, 60s and 70s and dementia. So if there's an issue for young athletes, it should be investigated, and the professionals should have an open mind. And similarly, if stuff's happening to the public, that's important too, that we have that debate, an honest debate. Of course, let me stress that the NHS, Public Health England and the government are 100% confident about the safety of the vaccines. But it's all about opinions, folks. What's yours? mark@gbnews.uk. Lots more to come. We're going to America next. So we'll do weather, and don't miss a second of it. mark@gbnews.uk. See you shortly.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. This weekend we've got high pressure in charge of our weather, which brings dry and rather cloudy weather with the risk of some dense fog. And it will feel quite chilly as well. There's not much wind around over the weekend, and that means that fog will be persistent and temperatures will struggle to rise where we do see the persisting cloud and indeed fog. Now, as we take a look through the next few days, you can see certainly through tonight, we've got a lot of fog across some eastern areas of the UK. So fog warning is in force from the Met Office, and that remains in force until midday on Saturday. Elsewhere, lots of cloud overnight. Where we do see some clearer skies, though, for eastern Scotland and northeast England, we could see some frost as we start tomorrow morning. Quite windy, though, across the far southwest. And those winds will be quite gusty for a time across Cornwall. Elsewhere, though, with the light winds, it means that fog will be stubborn to clear. So for some places, it may not clear through the day on Saturday, staying gloomy and grey. To the west of the UK, some brighter spells are possible. I think the best of any sunshine will be across Scotland. Temperatures struggling, though, for many staying in single figures, maybe just getting to 10 degrees in the far southwest. That's 50 Fahrenheit, but with a breeze, it will feel cooler. And then the fog becomes more widespread again on Saturday night. We could see some fog getting into parts of Wales, southwest England as well. So for some places, grey and gloomy remains the picture for the next couple of days. Some clearer skies, again, leads to a frost across parts of Scotland, maybe northern England, perhaps parts of Wales as well, although cloud amounts will come and go through the night. Then as we go into Sunday, that fog could again persist across some parts of the country, especially through the Midlands and northern England. That's where we could see it lasting all day. Where it does, temperatures will stay close to freezing, but away from that, it'll be just that little bit colder. As we go into next week, stays grey for many, a few sunny spells and cold. Bye-bye.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Well, Mescana and Matthew have brought in tomorrow's newspaper front pages. They make for explosive reading. You'll get those and reaction from my panel and another great British game show, a game based around a news story of the day, before the end of the hour. But first up, the headlines with Karen.
Thank you, Mark. These are your latest headlines. Cabinet Secretary Simon Case has stepped down from leading an investigation into alleged parties held in government during lockdown. His decision comes after the Cabinet Office admitted a quiz was held in his department last December. Officials say Mr Case played no part in the event, but did speak briefly to staff before leaving. A Number 10 spokesperson said the move was made to ensure the investigation retains public confidence. The Prime Minister says he takes personal responsibility for the Conservatives' defeat in the North Shropshire by-election. Boris Johnson's comments come after the party lost a seat that it held for almost 200 years. The Lib Dems candidate, Helen Morgan, won by nearly 6,000 votes. The by-election was triggered by the resignation of Owen Paterson after he breached lobbying rules. He had a 2019 majority of almost 23,000.
Clearly, the vote in North Shropshire is a very disappointing result, and I totally understand people's frustrations. I hear what the voters are saying in North Shropshire, and in all humility, I've got to accept that verdict.
Police have confirmed the 4 young boys who died in a house fire in South London were home alone. In a Facebook post, the 2 sets of twins, aged 3 and 4, were named by their grandfather as Leighton, Logan, Kyson and Bryson. A 27-year-old woman has been arrested on suspicion of child neglect. 2 teenagers have been convicted of the manslaughter of 18-year-old Hussein Chowdhury in Walthamstow. Video released by the Met Police shows Hussein and his family grappling with one of the attackers. He had come to their home under the ruse of buying a designer jacket Hussein had for sale. During the struggle, Hussein suffered a fatal stab injury to his neck. Marvin Ward and Alexis Morris, both 18 and from Ilford, will be sentenced next year. Ghislaine Maxwell has decided not to give evidence at her sex trafficking trial in New York as the defence rested its case. The British socialite told the judge there was no reason to testify as the government had not proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The 59-year-old has pleaded not guilty to sex trafficking charges. Maxwell's lawyers have portrayed her as a scapegoat targeted by prosecutors after Jeffrey Epstein's death. You are right up to date now. Back to Mark Dolan tonight.
My thanks to the brilliant Karen Roberts. Well, I've got tomorrow's front pages now. It is 7 minutes past 11. So uncensored in a moment, but first this. Here are the papers, and let's start with the Telegraph, shall we? This won't make great reading for the Prime Minister. PM's bid to move on from poll route is derailed by fresh leaks. Cabinet Secretary pulled from inquiry into Tory lockdown parties over allegations he himself had breached rules. You couldn't make it up. Now, this is a more troubling headline for me. Modelling used to justify Sajid Javid's claim that there were 200,000 Omicron infections a day has been abandoned by health officials who say it's no longer valid because of behavioural changes. On Monday, the Health Secretary announced the figure in an effort to win over MPs threatening to rebel against further COVID restrictions, but caused confusion by failing to release the methodology behind the circulation. There you go. More junk modelling. Welcome to Bonkers 2021. The Times Saturday, Downing Street parties inquiry in disarray after chief quits. Simon Case forced out over claims his office held a gathering during lockdown. The Eye, Omicron infections now out of control. The Eye do love a bit of Project Fear, don't they? Is it a problem to have a mild virus that's out of control? Ought to be the question of the day, ought to be the one posed by the Eye, but instead they're just going to indulge in panic. Variant cases are doubling every 1.5 days in London, the northeast of England, West Midlands and Yorkshire as the new strain outpaces public and politicians. Well, things are looking very rosy in South Africa. That's, of course, one of the places where this Omicron variant was identified. The medic who identified it told Dan Wootton on actually help us out with the pandemic. There you go. There's an idea. Healthy people getting COVID and recovering. It might just catch on. Let's have a look at the Mail now. Now cut the 10-day rule. As some experts say, Omicron patients recover faster and infections threaten to paralyse Britain, there's a call for a return to 7-day isolation. COVID isolation rules must be relaxed to stop Britain grinding to a halt, health experts and business chiefs have said. Well, got news for you. Britain has already ground to a halt. And the human, economic and societal damage will be huge. The Daily Mirror, they were all at it. Party Probe office had a party. Is it just me, or are you sick of this party stuff now? We get the message. We know that it's one rule for them and another for us, and we knew that a long, long time ago. The Guardian, number 10 party inquiry boss quits over his own party. Johnson in last chance saloon. Write the writes The Guardian. This is a quote from veteran backbencher Conservative MP Roger Gale, who said that Boris Johnson is in last orders time and said one more strike and he's out. Daily Express, down but not out, why we must put faith in Boris. Back Boris Johnson as the only leader with the courage to see us through tough times. And I've had a lot to say about Boris in my big opinion, which is now available on our Twitter feed. Carl has beautifully crafted it, and you can catch it at GB News on Twitter. Daily Star, white Christmas. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Bookies make it odds on we'll enjoy snow for the first time in years on the 25th. Lateral flow tests allowing, of course. Well, there you go. We could do, couldn't we? With a white Christmas, it would cheer us all up. There you go. Well, lots more to get through. A busy final hour of the show. Those are the headlines, but it's time now for this. Yes, a very popular item in the show, Uncensored, in which we tackle the dark underbelly of the news agenda. And tonight, let's head to the United States and the world of US politics with a man who is single-handedly saving free speech in the Western world with his brilliant new social media platform, Getter, which is growing by the day. Their CEO, Jason Miller, joins me now. Hi, Jason.
Mark, good evening. Good to be with you. And please set one of those drinks aside for me for next time when I come and visit.
I think Andre Walker may well have polished off all of the whiskey, so you might need to bring some bourbon from the USA, Jason.
Deal.
Hey, what's better, American bourbon or Scotch whiskey?
I'm going to go with American bourbon. That's just obviously got to go with what you're used to. But I know my father-in-law would give a different answer.
Well, there you go. America first, and rightly so. Now, listen, Jason, let's talk about 2022. It's going to be an eventful year in the world of politics and possibly quite a bruising one politically for Joe Biden at the midterm elections.
Yeah, Mark, what's important for folks to realize is that in the generic Republican versus Democrat polling right now, Republicans have about a 10-point lead, which is the record high at this point in election cycle, even bigger than the landslides from 1994 or even 2010. A lot of folks say maybe 60, 70 seats. I will tell you, Republicans could pick up even 80 or 90 seats in the House and should win back the Senate as well. It's going to be ugly for the Democrats.
Would that render Joe Biden a lame duck president? Would he be able to get any legislation through if that were the case?
Not at all, not with Republicans controlling both the House and the Senate. But you can also, it's really to be seen if Joe's going to get much of anything through even before then. And when we look ahead to 2024, I don't think Joe Biden is too far away from having the Democrat elite sitting him down and saying, Joe, you're not going to be our torchbearer for this contest. His numbers are the worst ever in presidential history at this point, and even Kamala Harris is lower than his.
Do we know much about the situation with Omicron in the United States? Or is it the same argument that we've had around COVID throughout, which is those on the left who want to control everyone and mask their faces, and those on the right who believe in freedom?
You know, I'm really glad that we have federalism here in the U.S., where we have some bastions of freedom, whether it be in states like Florida and Texas, places where we haven't completely lost our mind. You know, our headquarters is in New York City, and they're going to now a $1,000 fine if the inspectors go into your office and see someone not wearing a mask. Now, at least we get to go into our office. I know that's been canceled largely in the UK, except for the Christmas parties, of course. But I'm really concerned about the direction this is going. It is about control. And the fact of the matter is Anthony Fauci, who's the highest paid member of government, has no idea how to handle this. Joe Biden, our president, no idea how to handle this. It's growing fast in New York. And again, many of the highest vaccinated states are the ones with the biggest explosions.
Yes, and the strictest COVID measures. I mean, can you give me a sense of the difference in approach from a red state like Florida, run by Ron DeSantis, and a sort of blue state like California or New York? How markedly different has the approach been?
Well, I'll tell you, it's even a different approach from here in Washington, D.C., where I am at the moment, and just right across the river where I live in Northern Virginia. If you go into a restaurant or a pub or even a grocery store in Virginia, nobody is going to get on your case about wearing a mask or really start pressing you on these measures. But here in D.C., you can't even walk in a building without the mask police jumping on you and saying that you have to abide by the rules. But if you go even the bigger discrepancies, if you go to a southern state, you go to a red state, they're being much more responsible in their approach, in my position. And I also think that they're looking at the science, or in many cases, the lack thereof, before rushing to decisions.
Well, I'm assuming way more people have died and been hospitalized in these red states that have gone for freedom. Is that right?
Well, no, actually, the fact of the matter is in the red states, they're handling it very responsibly, and we have not seen out-of-control explosions. In fact, it's been much more the blue states where we've seen the problem. Now, in fairness, many of the blue states is where you have some of the big metro areas, New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, areas like that. But it's what we've seen, though, with the red states is people are actually starting to move to them because they want freedom. They don't want to spend their life with a mask. They don't want to spend their life worrying about if they're going to be able to conduct their business. At least we have that opportunity, and just having returned from France, where you have the national lockdowns and mandates that are going on, or what we see there in the UK. Yeah. I'm so glad for our system of government.
Well, yes, you will have detected my tongue in my cheek with that last question, given that per capita death rates from COVID are lower in freedom-loving Florida than in lockdown-loving California. And then, of course, there's the long-term systemic damage from creating recessions and closing once viable businesses, which will sadly bring with it another health toll. Jason, let's talk about the health of the economy. Inflation's back in the States, isn't it? And back with a vengeance.
It is, and this is the worst that we've seen it in 40 years, going back to Jimmy Carter, who was a one-term president, arguably one of the worst in history, although now he's saying, Joe Biden, thanks for coming along, because no one talks about me being the worst anymore. But I tell you, this is really where it starts to hit people in the wallet. We're seeing pricing for the holidays, whether it be Thanksgiving or Christmas, being much more expensive, the gifts being much more expensive, but there doesn't seem to be much relief on the way. We know that our Fed has said they might raise interest rates going into next year. No immediate action, but part of the thing, Mark, is it's not just the hyperinflation. We have the gas prices, the crisis on our southern border. There are a number of these crises, all created by Joe Biden, that are hitting us at one time. It's not a pretty picture going into the holidays.
No, it most certainly isn't. My heart goes out to the Americans. And of course, if you raise interest rates, that's going to make borrowing more expensive for American homeowners.
Well, and the other thing, too, is it's going to slow down the economy. There's going to be less activity that goes on. And this is what happens, though, when you print money with reckless abandon. And as long as they keep passing and printing more money, they're trying to pass another $2 trillion, or somewhat right now, that they'll probably end up doing in January, maybe beginning of February. It's just going to make the problem even worse. At some point, we have to stop spending money we don't have.
Now, Jason, we'll finish up on this. Dreadful scenes as a tornado and various tornadoes tear through Kentucky. How bad is the situation out there, do you know?
It's really bad. The numbers that I've seen are that over 60 have died in these horrible tornadoes. And I tell you, if you haven't lived in the area where they have tornadoes, if you haven't experienced it yourself, it is a horrific thought. These things can pop up in such short notice and just completely wipe out neighborhoods, if not entire towns. I've spent a lot of time in Kentucky over the years. I helped to elect a governor there a few years ago. Great people, hardworking, honest. But it's also a place where economically it's not as advantaged as areas, say, as Washington, D.C. or New York. Our hearts all really go out to these folks.
They do indeed, and I know my viewers will express the same sentiment. Jason, you were hoping to stage a fantastic free speech event here in the UK, and unfortunately it's had to be postponed. So is that going to happen in the new year?
Absolutely. So we're looking to hold counter conference in the first or second week of March, I believe. And to tell you how cool this thing is going to be, Mark, Nigel Farage, we had the Lawrence Fox, who of course makes a lot of noise, and we had not announced this, but we're also going to bring over Secretary Ben Carson, the HUD Secretary, Seb Gorka, Jack Posobiec, Raheem Kassam, my brother from another mother, who obviously was big in working with Nigel on Brexit. We also had about 25 or 30 European members of Parliament. Anyways, it's still going to happen. It's just not happening last Wednesday, and hopefully we don't have a 48-hour quarantine next time.
Oh, definitely. Well, look, Jason, we've got to get back to normal, and I certainly look forward to attending that event in March. And a quick word on Getter, your brilliant social media platform. You're out there to kill Twitter. Tell me about the business and about your growth.
Well, thank you. Getter is now up over 3 million users. In the UK is usually in our top 10, right around number 7, number 8 for overall growth. We have about 150, 200 folks there in the UK that are on the platform. I just got back from a full week in France where we have Eric Zemmour is on the platform, a whole bunch of the conservative leaders. And actually, Mark, listen to this. They let me in to the EU in Strasbourg to give a speech about free speech and populism and never bowing down to the globalists. I was convinced they were going to lock me up and throw me in the gulag down in the basement, but I survived. I gave a great speech. We had some 40 or 50 members of European Parliament from 10 countries there. And I tell you, there's a lot of folks who believe in free speech and don't want to see these lockdowns and mandates ruin it all.
Well, if you'd like to indulge in some free speech, obviously keep watching GB News, but take a look at Getter. You can get it, of course, on Google Play, the App Store and elsewhere. Always a thrill to have you on the show, Jason. We wanted to connect last week and the technology let us down. Do come and see us again soon, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Mark. You're the best.
Oh, thank you. Cheers, Jason. There we go. Fantastic stuff. And I'm excited to say that we've got another superstar booking on Sunday. Sean Spicer, Donald Trump's former press spokesman, the guy that hosted those iconic press conferences, will join me live on the show on Sunday night. So we can't wait for that. Sean Spicer, you won't want to miss that one. But next up, we've got lots to get through in our news agenda. My panel are back. We have filled Andre Walker with black coffee. And I'm delighted to say that Ingrid and Connor require no such caffeination. They're naturally energetic. We're going to cover some of the big stories of the day and also react to tomorrow's front pages. And before 12, another great British game show, a game based around a news story of the day. Tonight, Ready, Steady, Book. Can you guess the book from the opening line? Find out why we're playing that straight after this. But also in the programme, should young people be protected from social media posts of the past? If they were 15 and sent a naughty tweet, should they lose their job for it? We'll discuss that after a bit of good old British weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. This weekend we've got high pressure in charge of our weather, which brings dry and rather cloudy weather with the risk of some dense fog. And it will feel quite chilly as well. There's not much wind around over the weekend, and that means that fog will be persistent and temperatures will struggle to rise where we do see the persisting cloud and indeed fog. Now, as we take a look through the next few days, you can see certainly through tonight, we've got a lot of fog across some eastern areas of the UK. So fog warning is in force from the Met Office, and that remains in force until midday on Saturday. Elsewhere, lots of cloud overnight. Where we do see some clearer skies, though, for eastern Scotland and northeast England, we could see some frost as we start tomorrow morning. Quite windy, though, across the far southwest. And those winds will be quite gusty for a time across Cornwall. Elsewhere, though, with the light winds, it means that fog will be stubborn to clear. So for some places, it may not clear through the day on Saturday, staying gloomy and grey. To the west of the UK, some brighter spells are possible. I think the best of any sunshine will be across Scotland. Temperatures struggling, though, for many staying in single figures, maybe just getting to 10 degrees in the far southwest. That's 50 Fahrenheit, but with a breeze, it will feel cooler. And then the fog becomes more widespread again on Saturday night. We could see some fog getting into parts of Wales, southwest England as well. So for some places, grey and gloomy remains the picture for the next couple of days. Some clearer skies, again, leads to a frost across parts of Scotland, maybe northern England, perhaps parts of Wales as well, although cloud amounts will come and go through the night. Then as we go into Sunday, that fog could again persist across some parts of the country, especially through the Midlands and northern England. That's where we could see it lasting all day. Where it does, temperatures will stay close to freezing, but away from that, it'll be just that little bit colder. As we go into next week, stays grey for many, a few sunny spells and cold. Bye-bye.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Out of it, you know.
OK, lots of emails coming in response to our conversation over the last couple of hours on the subject of COVID. Richie says, hi, Mark. I had COVID in April and still have antibodies. My paid for by the ONS blood tests tell me that. Herd immunity. Yes, do you remember, Richie, when herd immunity was a 4-letter word? And now, of course, it's what we're all trying to achieve. Let's hope, as that South African medic that identified Omicron said last night on Dan Wootton's show, that actually Omicron might help us. Here's hoping. Today's papers are already rubbishing Sajid Javid's figure of 200,000 cases a day. And he doesn't want to show his methodology as to how he came up with that figure or where it's from. How surprising. Let's have a look at this. Lots of people concerned about the vaccine. Judith says, hi, Mark. We've seen an increase in friends, work colleagues who have had heart disease diagnosed since having the vaccine, and one who died of a blood clot. I feel a lot is being hidden about this. Imagine if it gets worse. Andrew, very troubling email. I've emailed you many times. The vaccine killed my mother within an hour of her having the vaccine, and it's doing its best to kill me. I now have real breathing difficulties, which I've never had before. My elder brother was bedbound for 2 weeks after his first. There are many people who have died or are suffering from this. Well, look, Andy, I'm really shocked to hear what you've gone through, and I'm really sorry to hear that. And let me just say that, you know, the agencies that regulate vaccines are 100% confident about its safety. What I think is it's very important that it's personal choice. That's why I don't think you can mandate a vaccine. I'm double vaccinated. I had the booster, but I don't care what someone else's vaccine status is. And all medications potentially have a side effect, and therefore it's got to be personal choice. But as I say, Andrew, I'm really, really sorry for your story, and I do wish you well. And it's a really, really tough time that you're going through. Well, with me, as you've noticed, we have Andre and we have Ingrid and we have Connor looking at the big stories of the day, and lots to get through. So let's have a look at our first one. And let's start with religion. A great concern, panel, that religion is facing a sort of long-term decline, and that we just now have a generation that have no faith and no morals. OK, this is sort of floating around the papers at the moment. Connor, what's your view of that?
Well, religion seems to be, I'd like to boil down particularly on Christianity, is the water we swim in. It's like fish that can't see it. So we have abandoned the actual explicit worship, even though all of our fundamental principles of bodily autonomy, of individuality, of loving thy neighbour as thyself, in Britain come from that. And straying from that over time has been a very difficult thing for, you know, the epidemic of Tinder, of consumerism. We've made other things our God. But it's not surprising that people don't want to literally practice. When the Church of England, I mean, Justin Welby was going on Twitter the other day saying how it's your social responsibility to go and get the booster. So there's, a pharmaceutical worship. And then last year, they were bending the knee to Black Lives Matter, an explicitly Marxist organisation. And Marx had no few kind things to say about religion, specifically Christianity, because there's kind of a problem with communism when it says you can't kill and steal. So we've got to get rid of that one. So I'm not surprised if the church attendance isn't up when they're making other things their idols.
Yes, and I've spoken to a number of clerics on this show who are really upset that in lockdown the church closed its doors to worshippers.
Yeah, definitely. Well, when it says, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, Christ didn't put up with tyranny. The entire message of him, the first thing he did when right before he was crucified, and the stories leading up to it, was turn over the tables, the market tables in the house of worship. And it was saying, OK, don't do things which are immoral in a society which is moral. Don't do practice, don't defer to authority beyond God's if you want to be a good moral person. Now, that doesn't mean you need to be religious to be moral. I don't go to church, but I value the value of Christianity. It does mean, though, don't just blindly follow authority. Stick to your principles and be an upstanding person. The church should have kept its doors open for people who really needed it during lockdown.
Yes, well, I'll bring you the stats shortly on where we are with religion in our current society. But Ingrid, do you think that we need to get back to faith? Do you worry that future generations won't have any faith at all?
I worry an awful lot, and I've been worrying for a very long time, because when my children were at school, and certainly my eldest, he was born in 1980, so he started to have RE at school, and he was at boarding school, and therefore I mention that because it was multinational, multicultural, and they were saying really sort of like to water down the Church of England type of balance, and said to the others, you know, you don't have to attend to the RE classes and so on and so on. And I think when in Rome, do as the Romans, and you just have to respect that, because if you went to, say, you know, one of the Muslim countries, you would have to kind of abide very much by their rules. Anyway, so I felt that then they weren't really concentrating on Christianity. They were being rather broad in their outlook on religion. But I looked at statistics, funny enough, on this, but yours are probably more up to date, because this only goes up to 2019. Don't know why. And with Christians, there are 14,749,000, no religion, 10 million, just atheists, and Muslim, 1,615,000. And I think that's really sad. But you know what I think as well? I think a lot of people don't admit to being religious or believing in God and, you know, all the Christian faith. But I find it quite interesting that an awful lot of them still want to get married in a church. And they want to have their children christened.
Yes, they want the pomp and ceremony.
Yes.
What's what my old priest used to call the hatch, match and dispatch brigade. They'd come to baptisms, weddings and funerals. By the way, can I just say to you, you need to know where your thumb can and cannot be seen on camera.
That's a very good point.
Listen,
that's not the first time.
That was classic.
My thumb's got me in trouble, let me tell you.
Classic piece of professionalism.
Well, I really didn't know what was going on there for a moment.
Don't worry, it had never happened on Mutton.
It wasn't a rude hand gesture, let me tell you. But look, no, I mean, I think you have to ask yourself whether society needs more faith, whether it needs more religion.
I hate to sort of quote Vladimir Putin, right? But I had a friend of mine who's a Russian.
The best stories start with that sentence.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's not whiskey, it's vodka. But a friend of mine who was a Russian diplomat was saying Vladimir Putin is an atheist. Right, and he's probably not homophobic. He's not bothered about any of those things. In reality, what he feels is in the West, and I think he's got a point. When we talk about a multicultural society, what we've actually done is given up our own culture, whether it be the tradition of Christianity, whether it be the traditions of even May festivals and that sort of thing, harvest festivals. And he genuinely believes that if you don't stand up for your own cultural background, and when I say stand up for it, I mean actually use it and participate in it, it will be replaced by a different culture. Now, you may think that that is a good or bad thing, but that's why he wraps himself in the Russian Orthodox Church, even though he's a complete atheist. And I think it's a reasonable point. We constantly talk about the importance of encouraging other people's cultures who come to this country, but I do think there needs to be a bigger element of saying you have to be part of British culture.
It's our identity, isn't it?
Well,
It's tradition.
I have to say,
uphold this.
my grandmother came over from Greece, and her view was when she came to Britain, you know, if you like Greek culture, stay in Greece, come to Britain because you want to be part of British culture.
Or at least respect.
Well, it's about sharing a moral
country.
framework, and this is why, like, the sort of wokeism or the climate apocalypse narrative have become our new churches. It's because people don't lose a religious sentiment; they just need to reattach it to profit.
But Connor, what about this idea that I remember the late great Christopher Hitchin used to argue? Christopher Hitchin said that the First World War was such a disaster for every single country in Europe, and so widely supported effectively by the Christian Church that it killed Christianity. People could no longer support the Christian faith after that calamity. Now, look, I don't know if he was right, but I think there are things that have happened in recent European history that have made people doubt the existence of God.
It's a crisis of faith. There's a quote by F. Scott Fitzgerald, I believe it's the end of This Side of Paradise, where he said, a new generation awoke to find all gods dead, all wars fought, all faith in men shaken. And so these crisis events, we've had one in our family. For example, my uncle passed away, my mother and my grandparents really turned back to the church support system, a lot of charity work. So it can be the catalyst, tragedy can be the catalyst to either renouncing your faith in a higher power because you believe that there's so much evil in the world that why couldn't they do something about it, or you attach yourself to the community built around that faith and you try and transform.
But you're talking about older people. I'm talking about this generation that are emerging because they aren't taught. I believe very much in the Ten Commandments. And I think if the children of our... I
don't know, can we have adultery?
No, we're not French.
Okay.
Oh.
Can't we have a
what was that?
I really don't think that's a good
Which
idea.
ones would you keep?
You're sleeping on the sofa when you get home.
What was that? No sex, please, we're British. Which is...
Can I smile at my neighbour's wife?
You're allowed that.
Do not covet your neighbour's ass.
But don't touch.
I never have done.
Which is not rude, by the way.
But seriously, the Ten Commandments, if you look at it that way...
Makes a lot of sense.
It does. And it really distinguishes right from wrong.
Yeah.
So that is the foundation of what children should grow up with, and that should be supported, hopefully, by the parents. But we've lost that because they're trying to be... Perhaps they're kind of a little bit woke, and you don't want to offend the other people in the country that go to these schools and multicultural, and therefore you can't...
Just one final comment.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go on.
I was going to say, I'm a Catholic. The Catholic Church has a large number of primary schools, and I know we can all make jokes because of the way that some Catholic priests behave. That's fair enough. But I do think that having that has been the backbone for the Catholic Church. The Church of England, what have they got? Bishops being selected by the Prime Minister following any political whim of the day.
Well, no, you raise a great point. And Ingrid, this is a really interesting one, isn't it? Because I think we're just the two that have kids at the moment, right?
Yep.
When you're choosing schools for your kid, I mean, never say never, Connor, let's be honest.
I might do a Boris.
Yeah, you might do,
dear.
if you've got the energy. But faith schools are always the best.
Yeah.
What does that
Always
tell you?
the best.
And it's because they have traditional philosophy of discipline, hard work,
But
work
usually
ethic.
it's only up to it's only the primary, exactly. But it's really interesting. My grandchildren, their favourite subject, because they went to faith school, the Church of England school, RE.
Yeah, they love it because it's full of ideas about life.
And it's the story as well, and it's magic, but it's real at the same time. They like all that, and really, I do feel that that's where they gain the understanding of right from wrong, a conscience. This is what everybody.
And I don't think it even matters what the religion is. I mean, I know.
Oh no, it does. Yeah, absolutely.
Britain's a Christian.
Country, it matters.
Britain's a Christian country, but I mean, most faith schools teach those traditional values. Don't they?
No, but they don't teach traditional values in terms of, and I'm going to say it, in terms of Islam. The books are reversed in terms of the Old Testament was very insular, and then the New Testament made it universal. It took it from this is an ethic that one group should follow to everyone should follow, whereas the reverse was Muhammad said this is the ethic that everyone should follow, and then the hadiths made it this is the ethic that the people that I favour should follow by the sword. So if you're teaching the traditional Quran, there are plenty of peaceful Muslims. If you're teaching the hadiths as absolute, there is a textual justification for the violence we see across the Muslim world. So religion does matter.
A debate that will continue. It was really, really interesting having a look at those stats earlier, by the way. The number of Christians in England is close to falling to below 50% for the first time. And let's be honest, it's a downward trajectory. Figures published by the ONS showed that in 2019, 51% described themselves as Christian, an 8.3% decline from 2011. In contrast, atheism is on the rise, with 38.4% reporting that they have no religion. So there you go. By the way...
Sorry, can I say something?
Yeah, go for it.
2019. Why haven't we got up to date? That's the figures I gave here, but I gave them in numbers and not percentages.
Yeah.
Why don't we have up to date? This is 2 years out of date.
It seems to be that...
How weird.
I wonder if it's lockdown and the pandemic. Who knows?
Well, they probably can't knock on people's doors. Do you know something? I had a very good friend of mine called Tom who forwarded the email. Do you remember when everyone was claiming to be Jedis for that census?
Yes.
Right.
That.
Everybody believes at the BBC that he's the man that got everybody to be. And if you search it, it goes, who started the Jedi thing? And it mentions my mate Tom, who had nothing to do with it. He was just an early adopter of the email forwarding.
Although he does have a lightsaber, I've heard. Yeah. He takes it out. It's surprisingly big in the flesh. Now, Victor has emailed. Victor wants me to read out his email. And Victor, thank you, because you've sent lots of emails. I'm so grateful. I get so many emails, and I really wish I could read more of them out. And I appreciate every one of them, and I read every one of them. But Victor, on the Tory leader, Victor says the only person the country would trust is Steve Baker. That's right, Steve Baker. With the right team behind him, he could do it. The pensioners will never trust Sunak. And on Labour, I voted Labour all my young life. Then, when they lost Scotland, Blair started importing voters with his immigration policy. That's when they lost me. That's the view of Victor. I will come to you very shortly, Andre, but finally in this section, well done to all of you sensible folk having a night in watching GB News, because today is Black Eye Friday. That's right, Black Eye Friday, the last Friday before Christmas, and the most popular night out of the festive calendar. In an attempt to warn partygoers to take it easy, Network Rail have released CCTV footage of what can happen when you drink one too many. Take a look. Andre, I didn't want to zoom in on any of that footage in case any of those people were you.
I'm not being funny. That looks funny, but you know, my uncle did similar in Liverpool. And you know how when you get to the bottom of the escalator, they've got those gauze? It ripped his finger off.
Yes, that's final destination.
It's because, of course, what happens is it will just take it out. Absolutely. So I'll tell you something. Much as all that seems very, very funny, there are people injured and killed.
Yeah, but
I put a damper on that now.
Yeah, but that is like Darwin Award level of natural... Because if you're going to get that drunk and just go down the wrong...
Well, no,
you bring it on yourself.
In defence of my uncle, there was a trench coat involved. His trench coat got caught and he put his hand down.
Can I say further to our earlier chat, I'm not a Jedi, but I do have one particular gift. Certainly in my pomp, when I was a young man about town, I had this amazing habit of falling asleep on the train and waking up at my stop.
Oh, yeah. It's like muscle memory.
Paul McKenna, Eat Your Heart Out. What's going on there?
Yeah.
Have you done that?
Well, I've done that with like waking up, because if I tell myself before I go to sleep that I've got to be up at a certain time, I'll wake up before my alarm. So it's almost like a subconscious message to your body clock to go, "Oi, this is so important, prioritise it over getting a good night."
No, my favourite one, and I don't know if it ever happened to you, this was a great skill. Wake up for school at about 8 o'clock in the morning. I mean, quite a long time ago, by the way. Right, not recently.
I didn't wake up for school.
I've not been generally trawling schools, right?
unless you've become like a really unusual math teacher.
Yeah, again. But wake up and go, oh, God, I can't bother going to school today. It's a Saturday.
That was the
best thing ever. Do you remember that feeling? That I've never replicated that. Whether it's the whiskey I had earlier, whether it's any parties I've ever been to, that feeling of, do you know what? I've just realised it's Saturday.
Yeah, that whiskey you had earlier, you're going to be the bloke on the escalator by the time you get there.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. When I get into the car on the way back from GB News, the driver's going to need a gas mask after that.
Yeah, that's going to be Black Eye Friday, because whatever you say in the back of that cab, as soon as you get out, he's going
to... Plus, stop at the kebab shop on the way back.
Well, you mentioned the Darwin Award, and I was at a train station last year, and there was a sign at the top of the escalators, and it said lots of people have been falling down the escalators taking selfies. And I just thought, I mean, are those people surplus to requirements in our society? I mean, have we really got to save the people that fall down the
if you're in Moscow.
Because they're doing a TikTok video just to look cool.
Yeah, if it was Moscow, I could understand it, because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
With all the
King's Cross, Peterborough.
Don't get it.
Edinburgh Waverley.
Imagine if Trump had stacked it coming down the escalator.
Actually, do you know what? I would do a selfie at Birmingham New Street, because that is one gorgeous street.
Is it?
What?
Oh, and St Pancras back in the day.
I was there today. It's hideous. It's underground.
How dare you?
It's all disgusting and...
You went to the wrong bit. It's got a shopping centre in it.
Has it?
Birmingham New Street. Yeah, it's lovely. It's very glitzy.
Yeah,
there used to be a John Lewis there. You not been?
No, I've never been. I was going to say I often take runway catwalks on the Jubilee line. Like, who the hell?
Well, I'll tell you what. I used to have a favourite service station, and it was Oxford, because it had KFC and Burger King, and it had quite a good off licence as well.
You shouldn't eat junk food. I'm sorry. I'm just being like mother here.
Well, lots more to come, and I think you'll agree it's highly entertaining stuff. We're going to play a Great British Game Show.
Yoo-hoo!
A game based around a news story of the day, and today it's an absolute corker. You're going to love it. Ready, steady, book. Can you spot the quotation from a famous book? And also, we're going to get more of your emails and more big stories of the day. So we'll see you after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. This weekend we've got high pressure in charge of our weather, which brings dry and rather cloudy weather with the risk of some dense fog. And it will feel quite chilly as well. There's not much wind around over the weekend, and that means that fog will be persistent and temperatures will struggle to rise where we do see the persisting cloud and indeed fog. Now, as we take a look through the next few days, you can see certainly through tonight, we've got a lot of fog across some eastern areas of the UK. So fog warning is in force from the Met Office, and that remains in force until midday on Saturday. Elsewhere, lots of cloud overnight. Where we do see some clearer skies, though, for eastern Scotland and northeast England, we could see some frost as we start tomorrow morning. Quite windy, though, across the far southwest. And those winds will be quite gusty for a time across Cornwall. Elsewhere, though, with the light winds, it means that fog will be stubborn to clear. So for some places, it may not clear through the day on Saturday, staying gloomy and grey. To the west of the UK, some brighter spells are possible. I think the best of any sunshine will be across Scotland. Temperatures struggling, though, for many staying in single figures, maybe just getting to 10 degrees in the far southwest. That's 50 Fahrenheit, but with a breeze, it will feel cooler. And then the fog becomes more widespread again on Saturday night. We could see some fog getting into parts of Wales, southwest England as well. So for some places, grey and gloomy remains the picture for the next couple of days. Some clearer skies, again, leads to a frost across parts of Scotland, maybe northern England, perhaps parts of Wales as well, although cloud amounts will come and go through the night. Then as we go into Sunday, that fog could again persist across some parts of the country, especially through the Midlands and northern England. That's where we could see it lasting all day. Where it does, temperatures will stay close to freezing, but away from that, it'll be just that little bit colder. As we go into next week, stays grey for many, a few sunny spells and cold. Bye-bye.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So many emails. One day I just want to do a 3-hour show and it's just you and me and the emails, because it's always so informative and everyone takes a different view. That's what GB News is about, and that's what this show is all about. Let's have a look. Kim Ellen on the subject of religion. Hi Mark, great show tonight. All religions claim to be peaceful, loving, forgiving and tolerant. Yet we've gone from the English Crusades to the Spanish Inquisition right up to ISIS and death to the infidels. Seems to me that religion is the devil's work. Strong views there from Kim. How about this from Andrew? And this is on the subject of an email I received earlier from one of our viewers who has had a very bad experience of the COVID-19 vaccine for his family and himself. Andrew says, Mark, you should be checking the validity of these vaccine scare stories before you air them. Most of the people taking up hospital beds and perpetuating this disaster are unvaccinated.
That's not true.
And this sort of unproven scaremongering is not helpful. Well, look, Andrew, thank you so much for offering that balance. I happen to know that the public, as a majority, a huge majority, of course, have gone for vaccination and are confident that it's safe, and the authorities have done their due diligence. I'm triple jabbed, but as I keep saying, it's got to be personal choice. And I certainly wouldn't want to victimise anybody that hasn't had the jab. I consider it none of my business. And I think that mandating it is just a price too high to pay for having a supposedly free society. But it is all about opinions. And Andrew, thank you so much for sharing your concerns. Quick one, Ellery says, being asymptomatic doesn't mean that someone is not infected with COVID and incubating it. Consequently, they can spread the virus to others through breath, coughing or nasal droplets. While opposed to vaccine mandates and compulsory vaccination, mask wearing is a minor encumbrance. Masks and face coverings are a practical barrier to spreading germs to others or inhaling pathogens in the air, particularly in confined indoor spaces. A 4-layer cotton mask with adjustable ear loops and lined with kitchen roll for hygiene It's effective, and for additional protection when shopping, it can be covered with a 2/3 layer scarf as an extra defence against particles.
Why not just put a plastic bag over your head?
Well, you know, that's Ellery's view. Masks.
Yeah,
53 million of them in the ocean.
I'll say, there you go. Well, look, there you go, Ellery. Look, thank you for that, because it's all about opinions, and I love to hear all of yours. So, look, let's get to this now. It's a very great story. Britain's richest man, Sir Leonard Blavatnik, a great guy, has donated £7.5 million to prevent a collection of literary treasures being split up and sold around the world. So God bless you, sir, for your generosity. The private collection, which includes notebooks from the Bronte sisters, letters from Jane Austen, and original manuscripts by Sir Walter Scott, was due to go on auction individually in July, but Sir Leonard's generous donation will ensure that the texts are kept together and remain in Britain. So, panel, and you at home, how good is your knowledge of literature?
How good do we look?
I studied it. So
well, this is perfect. Your quid's in for the trophy. It's time now to play another great British game show. And tonight, inspired by this story, we're going to play Ready, Steady, Book. That's right.
I get it.
There we go.
I'm going to read you the opening line of some classic works of literature, and I want you at home and my panel to tell me the name of the novel. So let's start with this book quote, number one. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much.
It's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
Oh, is it?
Let's have the reveal. Let's find out which Harry Potter was it?
Philosopher's Stone, first one.
Or was it the Goblet of Fire?
No, it's the first one.
Philosopher's Stone. The first
Look, I love the fact he knew. That's humiliating.
I hate these books.
He's so happy.
I hate these
No,
books.
I do.
That's why I know
I can ruin them with
word.
one single sentence, OK? Why didn't they use time travel again? It's the worst plot hole ever, and J.K. Rowling, as much as you want to praise her for Talk on the Trans issues, she's a rubbish writer.
There you go.
It's all about opinion,
One-star
as
review.
Mark would say.
Exactly right. Let's have a look at our second book quote. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Wuthering Heights.
That was just this afternoon.
Tale of Two Sissies, Dickens.
Correct. That's right, exactly. Let's have that reveal. It was the best of times, the worst of times. Charles Dickens, A Tale of Two Cities.
Oh, I can't believe this. This is not fair. Can't you have, like, a test about pies?
You already tried whiskey earlier, it's fine.
Or it may be whiskey. Let's have a look at our next one. There is some good in this world,
I love this one.
It's worth fighting for.
Lord of the Rings, Two Towers.
Let's have a look.
Oh, he's just...
Now, it might be Lord of the Rings. Has he got the right one?
Two Towers.
It is the Two
Of
Towers.
course he's got the right one.
Sam's speech is an amazing moment.
English.
I tell you what, he's a proper mastermind, is our
Uni.
Connor.
Yeah,
OK, let's go
you
for
are.
our next...
Don't show your
next
neck,
one.
Connor.
Shut up.
Here we go. As he walked along, he kept his eyes very wide open, looking for somebody to tickle. Looking for anybody to tickle.
Oh, my God.
Do you think it's a Mr. Men, Mr. Tickle book?
Actually, yeah, it might be. Yeah,
Not that it's a classic, but I'm going for that.
Let's have the reveal. Let's have a look at who it is. It is Mr. Tickle. Well done. Ingrid gets the point. OK, let's have our next quote. Here we go. Beware, for I am fearless and therefore powerful.
The Bible.
It could be. Is it the Bible? Let's have a look.
What's that?
It is Frankenstein.
Oh,
Mary
Frankenstein.
Shelley. OK, one more.
Obscure one.
He was a big fat caterpillar.
Andre's autobiography.
No, no. It's Bernard Manning's autobiography.
Hungry
Let's have a
Caterpillar.
look. Let's have the answer. Hungry Caterpillar. It was. Well done to Liam and the team for putting that excellent game together. My thanks to my amazing panel, but most importantly, my thanks to you. We've got a massive show tomorrow. We're back at 9, and of course, we're back on Sunday as well. So I'll see you then.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being